Okay, let me see if I can invite my beautiful guest, Cosmic Canary. And let's see if she can jump on. And let me share the live. And let's see if she can jump on. And let me share the live with a and let's see who's able to jump on. Let's see. So this is about autism and ADHD. I'm hoping that, okay, Celtic Canary. I'm sorry, I keep calling you Cosmic Canary. Let me get you on. So I've just sent you an invitation. Okay, beautiful. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. So, oh my God, I just finished an Akashic reading, so that's why I was a little late, and I apologize. And I need to look at, you would send me this information to share with this live, and I have to tell you that I'm not prepared because this Akashic was like going on for a while. I wanted to know if you could be so kind as to maybe wait until we have at least 9 people. And this live is about autism, ADHD. Actually, it's really about if you have anyone who's a child who's under 18, or you know someone who's going through something intense. Celtic Canary is just this amazing soul that has worked in special ed for years. She's a psychologist. She's brilliant. Andromeda Flame is not joining us because she's really sick. So unfortunately, she can't join us. But I wanted to know if you wanted to add to your background and to share with everyone. We've got about 7 people. Let's just jump in and talk about what you've done and kind of give a bio to the audience. And then I'm sure more people. And please share the live if you can, all of you who are here. Can you
Sure, of course.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I just want to first say thank you, Tony, for inviting me. And I've been so blessed to have found you, and your lives have meant so much to me, and our connection has really changed my life in a lot of ways. So I'm truly honored to be here, and I hope that I can provide some information and support to the collective. I just want to make it clear that I'm not here, to sell anything or, to gain clout or followers. This is really something that I want to do, again, just in service to the collective and share some important information. And one of the things that I want to share is just, a caution about who you trust to advocate for your child in special education.
I love that. And honestly, that's what I love about you. That is exactly what I love about you, because that is your heart and soul. And she has been advocating for in a system that I'll say it because I know you won't say it, but I'll say that incredibly American public school is, and a lot of public schools are corrupt. And they are not really here, depending on which states you go to. Once there are people literally moving states to get better services for their children who have autism, who have ADHD, or what have you, because some of these states are just beyond. The word corrupt doesn't even hit it. And if that's your only child, or you've got 2 kids and they're in the public school system and they need extra help, you would think there are 2 types of people in these public schools: educators, which is you, Celtic Canary, and there's teachers. There's a difference in approach. Teachers are collecting their paychecks, and educators are here to educate and to advocate for the young minds that are coming through their doors. And so there's an integrity. So I'm trying to find on your email, because I really want the bio you sent, I really want to share it. But any questions so far out there, definitely please follow Celtic Canary right now. so that you can actually follow her content on what's going on. Okay. And yeah, share the live. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing the live. We need more people. And why is this important? Okay. Why is this important to talk about the process of trusting the right people who are involved in changing the life of your child that may have learning differences? And that's the key word, I think, learning. What would you like to say about that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, first off, we live in this time where discerning the truth, fact from fiction, is more muddied and clouded and corrupt than ever before. And unfortunately, the people that are targeted the most in this time, in this era, are vulnerable people. People that don't have the knowledge or the time, the money, the resources to really do their own research and get connected to the right people and the right sources, and they get taken advantage of. And I'm at that point where I'm just so sick of seeing this. And I want to do everything I can, especially now on this platform, to let people know that there are a lot of other, individuals on this platform that I'm starting to see pop up that claim to be advocates for special needs kids, claim to have the knowledge and the training. And it's absolutely infuriating because these people are charging a ton of money for information that is already free and out there.
Right.
And that's what one of the number one things that I want to tell people to look for is, if somebody is charging you for information that is already free and out there, like for example, public education code, for something that you could easily Google on your own, and go to your state Department of Education and look up the laws that are already there, laws and regulation. If somebody's charging you a couple $100s to give you that information, that's already a red flag right there that this person is corrupt. They're doing it to make a buck. They're not doing it because they really feel genuinely guided to help and support. They're doing it to take advantage of people.
Absolutely. And I found your bio, so let me read it. Okay. With over 15 years of experience as an educational psychologist in public education, I specialize in identifying a wide range of learning and neurodevelopment disabilities, particularly within special education population. Alongside my psychology career, I've pursued a separate but parallel path in dance and the performance arts. Currently, I serve as a disability integration specialist with a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping individuals of all abilities access opportunities in the performing and fine arts. I advocate for and consult with parents and students, guiding them through the complexities of special education services, assessments, and educational rights and accommodations in both school and post-secondary settings. That's exciting. That's exciting. So you guys, I mean, I'm hoping you're going to take advantage of this live and share with those who need it, because unfortunately, with the VAC and other reasonings and other things, a whole bunch of other reasons, many of our children are coming out either harmed by certain things or meaning, the VAC in some cases. That is the truth. And other things. And we have to be careful, unfortunately, Celtic Canary, because they will pull the plug as misinformation, let's just be stupid and let's just keep doing whatever and let's just follow the line like sheep. But at the end of the day, what are you, I want to break it down. What is the most egregious abuses in the autism, with kids with the autism spectrum in public education? And then if you could bring us to ADHD, and how sometimes those two things are confused. So if you could tell us what is going on, what are they not doing, what they should be doing for autism, and then break it down for ADHD. What would be best practices that has been refused by the system, the machine, and then how are these two diagnoses confused? Because I know sometimes some people confuse ADHD with autism and autism with ADHD. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. And it goes even, deeper than that. There's so much overlap between, between different, quote unquote disorders,
Right.
that it gets so complicated, especially for parents to understand if they're new to the game and new to, special education and navigating this extremely confusing and corrupt maze. And like you say all the time, Tony, it's by design, and that's the other infuriating part of it, is that it's by design that it's complicated. It's by design that it's meant to, there's a lot of confusing aspects of it. And that's where you get all these, hucksters, right? These other, people that claim to be advocates that want to come in there and claim that they know how to direct you and guide you and fill in these gaps when in fact they're there to kind of just prey on you.
Right.
And that's just one of the things that it not only just hurts my heart, but I'm at that point, Tony. I'm so sick of seeing it. And then when I see it on this platform, I'm like, okay, I finally have to say something. It's not right. These people are being led down a path where, they're finding these advocates and they're all, claim to know all the laws, the state laws, the federal laws. They claim that they can go in there and, threaten the staff or, find ways to, quote unquote, force the school to do A, B, and C, when that's just not the case. And that's not how you get things done. You don't go in there, threatening and trying to, throw your weight around, so to speak. At the end of the day, you get more out of, being a little bit more flexible and collaborative, but that is definitely not to say that you shouldn't know your stuff. You absolutely should know the rules, laws, and regulations about what you're entitled to and your kids entitled to in special education. And one of the things that has come up a lot, Tony, in your lives is talking about IQ testing. And that's something that I know a lot about. I've done hundreds of IQ tests for special education eligibility for different diagnostic purposes. And, I think that's definitely something that we should touch on as well. But, as far as what I'm seeing with autism and this increase in autism, there's so many aspects to it as, as somebody that also sees a spiritual side to this.
Yeah.
Definitely a metaphysical side. And I do believe that, a lot of these kids that are coming in with different types of, autism characteristics or tendencies, they're also, it's part of like a broader, adaptation for our society, right? Like it's almost part of this, kind of natural growth process that's taking part, an evolutionary process. But, there's a lot of misconception, right, around what students, what people on the autism spectrum are able to do and what they're not able to do. And the most important thing to keep in mind is that, all these labels, right, are just, they're not, they're boxes to check. I tell kids and parents all the time, look, like an IQ score does not define who you are, just like, any type of a disability label, autism or ADHD.
Can I jump in?
Oh, yes, please.
There's something that we need to understand about IQ tests. The IQ tests are dispensed in public schools or linear, and it's one type of test. There are nonverbal tests that you can require. In other words, so your autistic child may not do well in a verbal test. No kidding, especially if it's nonverbal. Hello. That's like common sense, but not so common. And there are different types of tests. And I learned this from my attorney Mark Witzmal up in San Marino, California, who does special ed. And his business exploded. I mean, because unfortunately, here's the reality of what's going on. But one of the things that he taught me, is that there are multiple tests. So, so as parents, you can demand other IQ tests to be more accurate. There was a client of mine who's also in special ed, actually in California, and she was telling me how this kid was a girl. She was 15, nonverbal, but was telepathic. What that means is, and I mean that literally, like she was typing on her iPad to this client of mine who was a special ed teacher what she was thinking, and the kid was 100% accurate.
I think I've seen like a documentary on Gaia about that as well. And that's, that's absolutely one of the, amazing skills that many of these kids possess, and we could have a whole other conversation about telepathy and mental health. And that's something that I think we've talked about before. There's a lot to unpack there as well. But yeah, especially with the IQ test, like, so autism, it has nothing to do with your intellectual ability. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. Many of these kids are brilliant. It's technically defined as a communication and social disorder. So a lot of times there's different, social language or social aspects that are really hard for for people on the spectrum or diagnosed on the spectrum to contend with, and a lot of times in my experience is because they're blunt and they're honest, and a lot of kids, a lot of people and parents like aren't, they're taken aback by that. But I've always found that, I absolutely, one of the best parts of my job is working with kids on the spectrum, because they don't have hidden agendas. They're going to tell you the truth. If you ask them a question, they're not going to try and spare your feelings. They're not, because that's not the purpose. They're there to tell you the truth and the honest, the black and white. They see things extremely clearly. But unfortunately, that doesn't always go over so well with people. But it doesn't mean that they're any less smart or capable. In fact, it's, most of the time it's the opposite. They're more capable and a lot more intelligent and insightful. They just may lack the language sometimes to communicate that.
I'm going to read what Rachel says. She said, or the mandatory, because we were talking about IQ, or the mandatory state testing they're making these special needs children do. Now, let me just say this, okay? Remember, let's go back to just basic brass tacks about how we're being fucked over by the system. We all know that if a man doesn't want to date you or take you out to dinner or buy you flowers, there's that old line, if he wanted to, he would. Oh, we all get that. And it's been 40 years of the fuckery of the system, and now it's gotten more complex because these beautiful children coming in to kick the hornet's nest, right? And we're being challenged now to change something that's always been broke. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it's always been broke, clearly. And I don't know when it started getting broken in the American public educational system, but it must have started maybe, I don't know, after World War II, is what my idea. So when we look at these kids with autism, and you're saying, and you're absolutely right about them being blunt and being in your, basically, if a teacher sucks, they'll say, you suck. Right. And this is, did you wear deodorant today? And to be honest with you, that's not a disrespect. It's the truth. Pretty much everyone's gagging that the person isn't washing. But one of the, I will bring something up, because many of you who are on your first part of your leg or your journey of having a kid that's just been diagnosed, right? And they're going to actually have you tour these different classrooms, okay? I want you to stay away from classrooms where there's a microwave in it. Why? Because the only way your child is actually going to learn being neurodivergent to becoming or understanding the neurotypical world, which is important, is to be in classes with kids that are just neurotypical. And to put these kids in these special eds with microwaves, which means they don't even go out for lunch with other kids, or they don't even go outside for lunch. Look at the special ed teachers. I'm going to be very blunt. If they look old, tired, and out of shape, some of these kids that are on the spectrum have a massive amount of energy, and they need occupational therapy. They need bouncing. They need trampolines. They need gymnastics. They need swimming. There's all kinds of shit they need. They need horseback riding. None of the shit you'll get from your public school system. The only way to get it is to connect with other parents who have kids on various spectrums divergence of neurotypical bullshit, and to literally start your own advocation team, in my opinion, to fucking push that machine over the hill and go, this is not working. This is so tired. I'm like, and all of you to protest. If you do this individually because you want to kiss the IP team's ass, you are fucked. You're fucking yourself out of getting what your kid needs. I'm not saying be rude to them and call and lunge over the table.
Right.
At the end of all my IPs, they hug me. But don't think I didn't know they were fucking me over.
Right.
Well, I had to go to court, you know?
And it's so unfortunate because there's definitely people, like myself and other people like Andromeda Flame, right, who are working in these systems that are already corrupt, right? We're trying to help parents navigate the corrupt educational and medical system. And there's a lot of people working in those systems that don't care, that are on board with, trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. And I think that, it's a super hard to kind of bridge, like, okay, I want to be able to help kids and help parents get access to everything possible that they're entitled to, legally entitled to. But, you have to check certain boxes, and you have to, a lot of times, like, I look for alternative pathways to help parents and get them what they need, even if it means, maybe drawing upon some different, sources, let's say, or, stating things differently so that they can get what they need. It's important, absolutely important to advocate for yourself and for your kid and know your rights 100%. But, it's also just, we're fighting against, like you said, this like tired, broken, like corrupt machine where they're telling us there's no money, right? There's no money for this. There's no money in the budget for that. And yet we're seeing administrators and we're seeing all these people, the higher ups that have huge salaries. Right. And it's so, and we're like, okay, sure. Yeah. There's no money for what these kids really need, but yet you can pay, the superintendent, easily a 6-figure salary, and all they do, is like, walk around doing like, the interviews, or just to, kind of save face, look like they're trying to participate in what the school district is doing, or that they care, when in reality it's just a big PR stunt, and
yet they have money to talk about gender dysphoria. It's like, they'll concentrate on that shit. It's like,
right.
My 5-year-old about whether he's a boy or a girl, but you don't bother to make sure that he has occupational therapy for fine motor skills, like lacing cards, right? Like lacing cards, or how to write their name, or buying those books for, I forgot what they're called, but they're called font. They're font books where you teach your child how to actually write each letter, which, by the way, that's no longer in the programs. Am I correct? They're no longer teaching that to kids.
No, I mean, yeah, that's all stuff that is separate. And I mean, I love OTs, and I do my best to connect OTs in almost every case that I work with, because so many kids can benefit from their ideas and their strategies, like especially kids like, that with ADHD that really need that kind of stimulation during the day. They have cool like kick bands that they can put on the bottom of chairs so that they can kind of mess with that all day. And then they have like different types of, sensory stuff that we can put underneath the desk, like different felts and stuff that the kids, can kind of like more discreetly use and kind of manipulate during the day to kind of manage some of their sensory stuff. And they have different, I have a special interest too on visual processing issues and visual processing disorders, and it's just becoming more and more of a huge issue, or a more of a prevalent issue that isn't being like really diagnosed or flagged, appropriately in schools. But a lot of OTs will also have access to different colored overlays, right? Because a lot of these kids need different contrast to be able to see and read better. And especially with the really crappy lighting that they have in schools,
that's my point, is like, There are psychologists who have studied the colors of paint, and there are some colors of paint that will activate learning or activate relaxation. And there are also light bulbs for activation of focus and concentration. On the side note, let's go back to what you're saying about things that are discreetly under tables and discreetly under chairs to control a person with ADHD. A little child, with a 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12-year-old child. Let me just say this. We need to stop accepting this bullshit. These kids need 3 to 5 to 6 running around. There should be trees to climb. There should be ring bars. There should be slides. There should be trampolines that are monitored. They should be playing handball. You and I both know that's not what's going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunately, to get that, what they need, and to have those types of experiences and access to, the outdoors, being able to practice other skills that are really much more important and relevant in our day-to-day life. You have to take them to either private school or some type of like a private educational pod setting. And I hear you advocating for that too. Hey, like getting together with other parents that are like, you know what, let's figure out a way where we can like have a learning group or a learning community ourselves. And help teach these kids and give them, a lot more opportunities to, just have a better education, period. Because right now, public education is, it's designed, it was originally designed, right, to just make worker bees, right? It's not, wasn't,
obvious. It's still, yeah. So if I were somebody who really gave a shit about education, like a superintendent, and by the way, Rachel just said her superintendent makes $140,000 a year.
I saw
That's like twice of what many of us are making. But let me not digress. What if we had still educators and teachers, and the only time in the classroom was between 2 to 3 hours a day, and the rest of the time was actually going off in the local yokel, whatever that is, and actually exploring the neighborhood, exploring fun shit to do, like, I don't know, like science projects, fun things,
right? Hands-on stuff. Yes.
Like playing with bubbles, and then let's see if you add this to that, what will happen to that. Working with animals, growing food, even in potted, whiskey barrels. So that means that even in the toughest urban areas to the more suburban areas, the protocol would be 2 hours. At most 3 hours of education, no testing, none, and quiet time, meditation time. Oh, many of you might laugh. Meditation. Well, so far, time out and corporal punishment is a failure in our society. We see that now. I hope.
Yeah, absolutely.
So meditation. These highly sensitive souls that are coming in with ADHD, which honestly, and I don't care. I'm just going to say, the guy who was Swiss. The doctor who was Swiss, he was from Switzerland, passed away saying on his deathbed, I regret I ever came up with that, because actually it's a lie. It's a lie. And when we look back at how we used to be as human beings, where we were harvesting, hunting, whatever, however, we were spending more times climbing trees and planting harvests, right? Or planting whatever crop for harvest. All of these things. When I look at Alexandre, I'm going to bring up this guy, okay? Because to me, it's Alexandre Dumas had no education. He's the writer of the Three Musketeers, the Count of Monte Cristo. You know who I'm talking about. And he was raised in the back country of France. But Rachel said some states still teach cursive. He had beautiful handwriting.
Right. Yeah, they don't in California anymore, and it's a shame. There's so many things that they don't.
Let me finish my point, because there's a point. And then he learned, he had beautiful handwriting, and went to Paris to work, and worked in the Paris library as a scribe. He was writing documents, and he came across these books. The Count of Monte Cristo is based on truth. The Three Musketeers is based on fact. And he literally just started writing, and that's how his career began. What I'm trying to say to you and to all of us is that what is happening is we are so regimented, and we're putting these beautiful, scintillating, glorious souls, and that's not just the neurodivergent population, but the neurotypical. And we are literally stripping their creativity out of them. And to be honest with you, some people that are learning how to code computers or whatever, or hacking, they started that shit when they were 12. They don't need
or
all
younger.
this shit, right? Or younger, yeah. They don't need all this shit. So going back to what you were saying about cursive, which Rachel was saying, teach it, California, yeah. I had to teach my son cursive. You were saying on the cursive.
Yeah. Yeah, there's it. I mean, and the reality is, just taking this, a few steps further, like as humans, we were never designed to be in buildings all day and sit in front of computers and basically behave like robots, and that's what we're trained to do. That's what they train, that's part of being, a cog in the wheel. That's, from really early on is how to train you to be a robot so that you can be a quote unquote functioning member of society in a building in front of a computer doing paperwork all day under lights that are terrible for you, with only access to really crappy food, and your only outlets are to spend money that you don't have. Right. I mean, like you said, it's all by design, and the people that suffer the most are already ones where society isn't built for them.
Exactly.
They have a lot of other sensitivities and needs that they have to navigate around, and it's just their quote unquote differences are amplified because it's not we don't live in a world anymore where we're sensitive to the neurodivergence, right? What we're talking about, and instead of embracing it and I think celebrating it, it's just we're pointing it out as, oh, that's defective, right? Or that's going to cause all these problems. And I think, yeah.
Well, I think what we need to understand as parents is that you guys need to stick together, and many of you are not. I'm sorry, I'm going to call a lot of people out. Rachel just said they have a naturist group that they love. All homeschoolers have nature groups. Believe it or not, Rachel, and I've noticed that with homeschoolers, is many of us would go in hiking and doing exploration and going to the rivers and salamanders and frogs and this and that. It's been the entire day, afternoon, with picnics and so forth. And that was something that many of us did once a week, and some of us privately with our children more than that. But the point, what I did see in IEPs, and I remember talking to parents along the way. So I'm going to give you my point of view from a parent who went through this. Is I noticed that none of the parents stuck together. I actually had parents where I wanted to try to start a mini revolution in our school system, and all the parents would say, well, I can't. I'm afraid of pissing them off, because if I piss them off, I will lose all the things I did, all the things I was able to get from the last IEP. Well, IEPs last 6 months. They come, typically, it should be every year, but sometimes it's every 6 months.
Well, and it's a working document. A parent has the right to call an IEP meeting at any time to change or update that document. And again, that's part of like knowing your rights, because they're not going to tell you that, or some might, but they want to make it seem that only they can be the ones to change or add services, and that's not true. You can absolutely always request an evaluation to add services. You can always request to get outside evaluations. If you don't agree with the evaluation that they've done at school, they have to pay for that.
Thank you for saying that. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, and this is a big question for you guys as parents. If you're a single mother, I don't know what to say. I'm just going to be straight up. I don't know what to say. But if you are not a single mother, if you're in a partnership with a partner of some kind, then some of you are going to have to sometimes make the decision to homeschool your kids and take, I'm not joking, and like the income will drop. So, it'll, but at the end of the day, the end result is a grown, fully capable adult. And so that's going to take sacrifice. The thing, I know that's not a popular thing to say. But as a single mother, I hopefully you have family like grandmothers or things like that. Hopefully, if you don't, and that's the truth with many people. See, this is why we're being pushed to start communities, because you can't do it alone. It's not sustainable. It is feeling the reason why women with, especially single mothers with kids on the autism spectrum, are completely destroyed. because they have to fight the machine. They have to fight the behavior of their children because the kid's going into school, maybe the school bus where he's being bullied, she's being bullied. God knows what's going on in school. I'm going to just throw it on the table. One of my friends has money, lots of money, and still her kid was SA'd by a whatever it's school, public school, by the way. And this went on for a year until they could figure it out. Okay, until they realized what was going on. And he was, I think, 9 or 10 years old, and he started having massive behavior downloads and meltdowns. And we all know that peeing in the bed is one sign that something's wrong. Right. I think what I want to say is that you need, as mothers and fathers, to hear hear your children, watch your children's patterns change. Believe in what you're seeing. Don't fucking gaslight yourself and call their asses out. If you have to pull your kid out of school, then fuck it, pull them out. But sometimes you got to throw in the towel and go, these people are toxic. They're not getting another day with my child.
Right.
And go into 100%. Does that make sense? We're going to have to do that. We need to talk about that, Celtic, because there's certain schools, and you know, in particular California. California's so amazing. It's so progressive. No, it's not. Rachel just said they still teach cursive. Girl, I had to buy multiple cursive books to get my son to learn, and he has a beautiful handwriting because of me. It wasn't going to fucking do itself.
Right. And I have so many, you know, parents asking me about stuff like that too. Like, you know, about what's, you know, right now there are reading levels nationwide are abysmal, right? Like we're passing all these kids through school that can't even write their names now at a 4th grade level, or even read like a 2nd grade text. And this is getting worse and worse and worse. And the teachers and the parents are asking me, what do we do? I'm like, well, you know, a lot of times that the school is so ill-equipped, and the turnover, you know, with their staff is constant. So they don't, these kids that really need consistency and stability aren't getting it, you know, even I mean, Tony, we can go on, you know, I mean, this is going to bring me to other, you know, stuff where I feel extremely passionate about what's happening with school shootings and why we're not doing anything and why these kids aren't safe in school. I'm, you know,
let's go back to the parent. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just call them out for a minute. You all know that the school system is broken. Okay, so that's it. So I'm going to call parents out. I'm sorry, I'm going to piss you off, and I don't give a shit. Not you, you know, Celtic, but parents. What do you mean? What are you going to do because your kid can't read? Where the fuck have you been? Why aren't you getting board books? Why aren't you getting little puzzles from Melissa and Doug where they're putting fish together on a puzzle so they can learn how to read and write? Why aren't you teaching your child to read their own name? Why my son at the age of 5, who was nonverbal, could write his name. He would sign in for whatever his occupational therapy. Not only that, he knew my phone number.
Yes.
Many of you parents have kids out there who are 9 years old who actually don't know your phone number. Who the fuck are you to ask these educators? There's a point where you're going to have to take fucking responsibility.
Yes.
You're going to have to buy those Melissa and Doug board games and these pizza fraction and the continents, and you're going to have to sit on the damn floor with your kid and play board games that are educational so they can learn how to read, how they can write, and you're going to read to them every night. You need to read to your kid with the book over your head, with them laying in bed, so they can read the words as you go. And that should start from the day they come out of your womb.
Yes, absolutely, Tony. Thank you for saying that.
I'm sorry.
I mean, that's literally where so many educators are at now too. Are like, well, what are we doing? I'm like, well, you know, one of our biggest recommendations to like mitigate this disaster is to have parents make sure that these kids are reading, or they're reading with their kids at least a half an hour to an hour every day. Exactly. And, you know, and when I was in school, I think when we were both in school, like that was common. Like we always had, you know, like knew either parents that were reading to their kids or read to us, and there was reading circles, there was stuff going on at the library, and so much of that has been lost. And I have to say, one of like the most like just disturbing things that I saw too, of course, you know, TikTok also full of disturbing new information, was a mother, I think it was probably a Can you hear me? Okay. I think it was a fairly new, not a newborn. I'm going to say maybe 6 to 9 months old. She's sitting there on the couch, and I mean, beautiful surroundings, right? Like obviously they had money, beautiful furniture. This kid absolutely cute as a button, totally dressed up. I think probably even wearing like designer overalls. And she's just like, I'm not really sure what to do. We just sit and stare at each other all day. And I'm like, oh, what?
Oh my God.
I was like,
Oh my
is this what's happening?
I think
So
I honestly, I think it is what's happening because it's bizarre because when my son was, he was a toddler, right? I would take him to the museum, Norton Side. This is all Pasadena, California, what I'm about to describe. But there was a museum called the Norton Simon Museum. And we would go. I had my ID from school. I actually would kind of hustle the system where I would flash it, and he was underage, so of course he could go. And we would go to the Norton Museum 2 to 3 times a week. We would go to the Huntington Botanical Museum. We had a card, a membership that was at the time $125 for the whole year, and we would go like again twice a week or once a week, and it was a botanical museum, right? Which means gardens, like the Japanese garden, the Chinese garden, the desert garden, the rose garden. Then there was art. There was the blue boy, the pinky, and just walking and through these gardens. And what do you mean? What are we gonna do? What the fuck? There's a whole world to explore, and we were poor.
Right.
We were poor because I was a stay-at-home mom here and there. So we were poor. But we would gather the money and go, okay, for this, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get my new ID for Pasadena City College, take 1 or 2 classes for the fuck of it. But I really am getting it so I can get the discounts to go into these places for free.
right,
And
right. You made it an interactive experience, which I think so many of us are like, yeah, you don't need money to do that. You just need to like care about educating your child in some way, shape, or form. Like just the fact that like you have parents that are sitting there with these kids that they're just like, oh, we watch TV sometimes, but then we just stare at each other. I'm like, so you're not reading. Like you should be, when you're pregnant and you have a child in your womb, you should be reading. You should be exposing them to music, all these things that are, literally at the, base level creating, connections, brain connections, neural connections that starts before they're even born.
But I mean, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I think we both have, so it's just so sad and so frustrating. And also this point of like, it's so hard to wrap my head around at this point where, the way that both of us are raised, my parents didn't have a lot of money at all growing up. And my mom went to work and my dad was basically the stay-at-home single dad. Right. And what we did all day was we lived in the Bay Area. And this is pretty much what we did almost every day, where if I couldn't go to a community swimming pool or we were taking a break from that, then we were either going to the bay and watching the boats, and he would be talking to me about the boats. Right. This boat in this color, where do you think this boat's going? Look at that. Oh, my friend had that, and we would be having conversation about boats, marine life, stuff like that. And then we would be back in the day when you could actually go to the airport and just sit and watch planes take off. Right. We would do that. And he would be talking to me about, oh, where do you think this plane is going? And, I went there. I went to Spain, and just sharing that information. And that, I guess at this point, I feel like I, completely took that for granted because I thought that was normal. I thought most people had something like that.
It's funny. I took my son to the observatory, and that was very expensive tickets, which is bullshit because it's run by the state. But I remember in LA, this was in Los Angeles, but we took him to the observatory only twice. But what I noticed is that parents are quick to go to Disneyland. Oh, let's just go to California or Florida. Quick to go to Disneyland. They'll put all their money in. And they'll go and go and go instead of fucking saying, let's go hiking. Let's go, let's have a tea. Let's have a tea party. Let's create, let's build something. Like I remember I have a video of my son using magnets to actually do a levitation train. You know those trains that are like on magnets? And that was
Yes, those are cool.
Yeah, well, he built that. And then he had to explain it to me, Professor, Barca, right? Professor Barca, tell me, and I have him on video to this day. He's like 8 or 9 years old, telling me what it all means and how this works, that it levitates above the tracks. There's so much. He was gardening with me. We were planting tomatoes and corn. He was helping me with my roses. I can't imagine anyone being bored with a child. It's fucking impossible. We were going and window shopping. We go to Anthropologie when it was fun. And now he knows how to shop. He'd be like the best husband for a woman because he loves to fucking window shop. He would cook with me. From the time he was 5, he was cooking, chopping shit. So it's interesting how people put down trad wives, okay? It's very interesting to me how they put down Nora Smith and they put down Ballerina Farms. And that's what you do with your kids, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you do with your kids. They're involved in fucking every day. You're not sitting on. I can't believe you just said that. I know Rachel's constantly doing shit with her kids, constantly, and very much. They're never part of the background because I hear them, and she'll applaud one of her kids verbally while she's finishing up a conversation with like me, for example, and it's like they're part of your life. That's the end of it. So if you're going to go to the museum, you're going to the museum, baby. You're going to go see a ballet, baby. We're going to go see a ballet. And you teach them how to behave in a ballet. In a ballet, you're not going to be running around, child. No, your little butt is sitting right here. That's when it's appropriate to have someone learn how to sit in a fine dining restaurant, in a ballet, in the theater. But in a schoolroom, no human being. Hell, most of us don't even like to be sitting at work. I think what the child can do, right, in full concentration and fairness, is to do 3 hours, and the rest should be play. Because what they found, let me just say, and you can tell me if you've heard about this, they found that children that are now becoming young adults, because they're always in front of the computer or in front of the classroom or in front of the computer, these children don't know how to originate and invent anything because they were not taught to invent anything or to use their creative like desires to create something. I don't care if it's a little miniature wooden house. I don't care if it's a little boat. I don't care, whatever it is. So they're putting these kids out into nature, and these kids are like bereft, going, I don't know what to do here. What do you want me to do here? Can you imagine?
Yeah. No, and I know exactly what you're talking about when, you look at studies worldwide, countries, developed countries that have the best educational outcomes, the best outcomes period for their population. We're talking about mental health, physical health, productive members of society, ratings for overall happiness and contentment in their life. These are societies like, I believe it's Switzerland, right? Where they have kids go to school, like you said, just maybe 3 or 4 hours a day where they're learning. Yes, they have to learn how to read, absolutely, to know how to do math. All those things are important, but they also integrate so many other aspects other than just paperwork, right? They're outside, they're counting, they're doing all kinds of different hands-on projects that are exposing them to making connections, why we need to learn, why we need to read, how math is applicable in our real world everyday life. That is so important, but it seems like in America that was never really important because it was designed, we weren't, the schools were designed to make us worker bees.
Yeah, and say who said it. Please say, because the premise of public education was said by whom? Go ahead and you say it.
Oh, we're talking about. Are we going to get shut down for that?
No, it's Rockefeller. No, it's Rockefeller.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't know how much longer on TikTok we'll be able to say that without getting flagged.
No, it's not a flag. It's a truth. It's a fact. It's not. There's no mention. It's known. And what he was trying to do, because Charlemagne in France, Emperor Charlemagne in France in the 12th century created the first schools. Okay, and then it spread all over the world. But Rockefeller put it to create workers because he needed workers. And one of the things with Roe versus Wade, one of the reasons why it was overturned was they need more workers.
Yeah,
Senators
exactly.
came out saying that. So on the side note, so you have
Yeah.
to understand that when you send your kid to a public school, and even private in some private schools, you are there to you are allowing these MFers to brainwash your kids. So
Mm-hmm.
when you have people like Celtic, Celtic Canary, like basically sitting there at IEPs, I can't tell you how many times I've seen these people. Like I can tell. Well, I'm a psychic, number one, and we're all psychics, but I actually believe in what I feel, unlike most people. So I'm sitting across the table. I'll never forget, and I could see their face fall, going, "This chick," meaning me, Mama Bear over here, is getting fucked over, and I would try to get to them at the end of these meetings and go, "Look, it didn't look like you agreed. Whatever you say here is like Las Vegas. I'm not going to throw you under the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me
Mm-hmm.
what I missed." And some of them said, "Look, I can't," because they're afraid to lose their job. But
Right.
some say, "You know
Right.
what? I'm about to leave. I'm moving to Oregon. I don't give a fuck. I'll tell you exactly what happened."
Yep, yep. And I feel like I've gotten to the point in my career where now I've been able to kind of transition into more like private practice where I'm doing more clinical work where I actually
Yes.
am able to advocate for parents, for kids in a way that I was never able to advocate when I was actually there in person and worried
Right.
about my job and doing. I mean, it's absolutely true. You get so tired and so exhausted, and
Yes.
you're just like, I cannot. It becomes so soul sucking and depressing,
Yeah.
and you get sick. You know, I one of the main reasons why I had to make that move and do whatever I needed to do is because my body was physically breaking down
Right.
from watching all of this happen and seeing how corrupt it was and seeing that how you know how much these kids needed the extra help and support and could have benefited from all of these things, but instead, there's here you go with these administrators and these superintendents. Hey, in California where I'm at, these administrators are making 200K plus easily. I mean, 140 is nothing,
Thank you. And let me just say also, what they'll also push you is they'll also push pharma.
Mm-hmm.
And then now CPS is a sword over your head. There's a lot of moving parts to the fuckery of these public schools.
There really is.
It
There
really
really
is,
is.
right? So they'll
Yes.
try to push it. And if you don't agree, right, you know what's going to happen. There are threats. Or
Right.
CPS will come knocking at your door. And
Right.
so this is not, so you guys need to understand as American parents, because this is really, I'm sure that's in the UK as well. You are being asked by the universe. This is where you got to loop it into the spiritual. What is the lesson here? What's the takeaway? You guys aren't standing together as parents like one giant fist. You are all your hands. It's a very Kennedy thing. Papa Kennedy said to his sons, okay, we're talking about the Kennedy family. And he put his hand out. He said, "You see," and he spread his fingers out. "You see this hand? If you grab my finger, you can break it." Then he clenched his fist and he said, "You see this? It's unbreakable." And it's power. And it's interesting how even this power, this fist, this community that you guys, many of you are not doing, okay? Many of you, I know because I went through the system in California, okay? I went through charter schools. I went through, I've gone to, I waged a civil rights action complaint against one of the schools. And
Mm-hmm.
I've won every time. And so here I was, like my husband and I were, at the time he was at home and I was working and I had to bring in the bread and also be a paralegal. And what I'm saying to you is if you guys actually, you all know each other, you've all seen each other, you all know who's special ed, for Christ's sakes, let's not play games. You guys are not fucking uniting. And if you united, you could topple the machine. And you guys are so afraid of your little breadcrumbing shit that they gave you, like more occupational therapy for your kid, like, I don't know, 16 hours for the next month. You got extra shit because they fucked up. Or you're in with the principal or whatever. You are actually a disgrace to accepting the crumbs. Because to be honest with you, okay, I had to pay out of pocket for his gymnastics. I had to pay out of pocket for swimming. That's why we were broke.
Right.
Because most of the money was going. I had to pay out of pocket for a dog, and I got the ABA person to come in and train my dog for my son. There were a lot, and we were broke. So broke. When I'm saying that, sometimes there was no food in the house. There were people bringing me groceries because I was fighting for my son's life. And I'm not putting myself on a pedestal. but I was trying to
No.
connect with parents, and none of them wanted to fucking align themselves with me, probably because I sounded like I sound to you now. Fucking irreverent. I don't give a fuck. Was passionate as fuck? But was I polite in the IP meetings? Absolutely. But you know what was funny? Many of the ones that had much more money than me, that could absolutely afford advocates at 125 an hour, would call people at the table MFers. I'm not joking.
Right. Yeah.
MFers. And
Yeah.
that is stupid, because you've just let your it's like telling the chef that returning the plate of food to the chef and not thinking they're not going to pee in your bowl of soup when they bring it back to you. And
Right.
you gotta be
Right. And
careful who you piss off, but right? But
it's very much like that in the medical system. Again, there's just so many parallels where you're so pissed off and so frustrated that you're not getting the care that you know that you need, or the treatment you know that you need. But, yelling at the doctor and telling them that they're a piece of shit, and that they're not, they need to be giving you the right medication or the right referrals, it's not going to get you anywhere. You have to be more creative. You have to find other ways to work around the system. And that goes back to, what you were saying with single parents. That's why it's even more impossible for them, because all of that takes extra time, money, energy, effort, connections, just to be able to get an app, somebody that knows how to find some loopholes, find the right person to talk to, so that you can, get the right case manager, start building the right case. I mean, like you said, again, it's by design. They make it so incredibly difficult for us to get what we need.
Very difficult. Now, one of the things I will tell you that I used to do is I was always, if I wanted a demand, whether it was an IP or demand or a red flagging, meaning you just did this to my son, I spoke to this and this, I would type it out. I would print 2 letters, 2 copies. I would bring it to the front desk of whatever school I was going to. I would have them rubber stamp it. I'm not joking, with the date and the time. And then I would have them initial received by. I will leave that copy, and the other rubber stamped, initialed, and so forth, I would keep for my records. By the time we would be in an IEP, I'd have maybe a stack of maybe 6 or 7 letters, and they were fucked. Quite often, some of the things, and still, even though I got a lot of things, don't get me wrong, I got my occupational and this and that, but the thing is, it was still not, it was not enough. It was not enough. Right. So knowing this, he had the gym membership, the gym with the trampoline, and he had the swimming. And the swimming was at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. And I would take him at night. Why? Because I knew that if he swam in water for an hour, he would sleep like a baby.
Yes.
So those are the sacrifices. If you're going to have children, right?
Right.
Children, you need to actively participate in them becoming souls that don't tell you to fuck off when you're on your deathbed and they're in their 30s. If you want a relationship with your kid, it doesn't start when they're verbal. It starts and they see you advocating, they see you fighting. If the principal calls you to the office and you have a neurotypical kid, right, who's mouthy, you better stand by your kid. Privately, and this is unless it's egregious, but privately you talk to your kid. But you don't ever strip them down in front of the principal because you want to be friends with the principal. The principal can fuck themselves, because the principal won't be there when that kid is 30 and you're into your 70s.
Yeah.
Be loyal to who needs to be loyal to. Remember that as a parent.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that?
That's huge. I mean, having your kids back. That's what you're saying, believing in your kid. Yeah. And knowing that, hey, if they're telling you that, they got to the point where they're pissed off enough to either, cuss or do something, that's breaking the rules, know that there's something important behind that. Exactly. Most kids don't do that just so they can be a pain in the butt. They do that because either they don't have the words or the communication or the ability to fully, conceptualize what's going on and be able to say that in a way that makes sense. And our kiddos on the spectrum especially struggle with that. That's why we also, we see, as educators, yes, there's a lot of kids on the spectrum that have all kinds of, quote unquote, behavior issues, behaviors that they don't know how to manage or control. And I'm like, so much of this goes back to not having the language, or at least the opportunity to find ways for them that they can communicate and be open to that. Like you're saying, hey, these kids have special gifts. You know, let's really be open to different ways that they can communicate.
Exactly. And one of the things you have to teach your kids once you learn how to communicate, first of all, is metaphoric language, which I've brought in many of my lives. I talk about the power of metaphoric language. What does that mean? How do you feel? Do you feel like the sun is in your chest, or do you feel like it's raining? Like you start out when they're 3, 2, right, whatever, at 1 month old. And what's interesting is what I'm feeling is that there is an apathy where many of you are putting, and when I say you, it's not you sitting here, obviously, but whoever you are that's going to listen to this one day, you got to understand, be honest with yourself. Don't bullshit yourself. You're not putting your kid in front of a TV. You better make sure you know what's being seen. I remember many of the cartoons I would get him would be like Kiki's Delivery Service, The Wind and the Willow, Narnia. I enjoyed it with him, but I wasn't, in other words, the TV wasn't on where there would be some weird commercials or violence. I remember all his friends were playing games, right? You know, video games. And don't get me wrong, I would get him. Here's what I really got a lot of for him. He had a massive shit of Legos. He had train sets that he had to set up the tracks, but he had Legos. And Legos that were complicated. Legos that would take like 7 hours to make. And he was blissed out. Kids like that, ADHD kids and kids with autism, they love that shit. Absolutely. And so if he was doing what he's supposed to do, meaning if he was behaving really well, I would say, hey, you've earned, let's go buy a Lego at Target. Do you think that was easy for me financially? It'd be $45 to $65. But, you know, if you really loved this particular one and he didn't have it, if it was like $75, I go, fuck, okay, well, we will do without this and that. But it was important because it not only was it activating his mind and he was able to hyper-focus, which is a gift. It's not a problem to be hyper-focused. In fact, I'm a writer. You have to be hyper-focused to write a book, my friends. You have to sit your ass down and hyper-focus. So he was hyper-focused on these Lego constructions and the pride he had at the age of 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, it went on until I think he was 12, 13, that he would love these things. And this is what we, as parents, are supposed to do, my friends. I mean,
right. I mean, Tony, what you're describing, you know, until I really got into this field, it seemed just like it would be like a no duh type of situation, right? Second nature. Yeah. Like how if you choose to be a parent, how could you go about this any other way than knowing that you're going to make sacrifices and knowing that you're going to do everything to, you know, regardless of how much money you have, you're going to go, you know, 10 extra miles to make sure that they feel loved, supported, give them opportunities to learn, to ask questions, to engage in the world around them. I mean, I feel like, you know, and now comparing that to what I'm seeing on TikTok, these parents that like have done zero reading or research on what it is to be a parent or what kids need in their developmental stages, like at all, that to the point where they're just sitting there looking at each other, wondering, what do I do with this child? Like it's mind boggling. It's mind-boggling.
That's actually child abuse in a way. I know it's child abuse because what you've done is there's a clean, like it's like a generic nothingness. It's like an empty room with nothing in it. There's no magic, and that's it. And it's interesting because there were, like, I remember there was a thing called Mozart's cube, and it was supposed to help with music and sounds and frequency, and it was a cube that lit up, and that was for like up to 3 years old. There's like there was a website called Fat Brain, and it had little kits, scientific kits to do like little experiments with electricity and things like that. Not dangerous at all, kid friendly. And we would, or my mother or my other friends would say, well, what would he like for Christmas or his birthday? And so they knew they had links to Fat Brain, they had links to Legos. If it was a girl, I mean, he was a boy. So I would buy little tea sets. I mean, he had 2 tea sets. I'm not kidding, from Japan from the 1940s, and we'd have little teas. We literally have teas and little miniature pastries, and and we would sit around. We had puppets. There were like, we had stiff puppets because, you know, me being European, of course, I'm going to do that. But and again, it was like I'd sell shit to buy shit, right? He
Right.
had, it was making sure that he had magic. We were poor. Okay, I'm not joking when I say that. But then I would do something insane, like save the whole year for an iPad, or this whole year for a pedal plane. It took me the whole year to save the money. But then at Christmas, he had a pedal plane. You know, the old 1940s looking planes for little bit for toddlers, right? He had that, and it's because you want to make sure that even though you're poor, you're giving your kids magic, and
Right.
so it takes discipline and planning.
And that's
Yeah.
and what you had was, you know, was really an abundance in other ways. So it may not have had an abundance of money, but I want to interject and say you weren't poor at all, that you were
Yeah.
absolutely had so much richness and so much abundance in so many other ways that so many other kids are absolutely poor or out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right on that end, and I feel as if when I think about it, when I think about, well, one of the things he says to me, because we never went to Disney, right? And I remember turning to him one day, especially when we saw the tunnels, and I turned to him and I said, you know, I was feeling guilty as a mother that I never took you to Disney because it was so fucking expensive, like insane. Just the trip going there, the gas, the tickets, the this,
Right.
like
It's
fucking,
ridiculous.
like
Yeah.
$200-300. And I said to him, with all the tunnels and all the shit and kids disappearing, he was such a beautiful he was a beautiful, beautiful child. And I
Right.
said to him, I don't feel bad with everything I've learned about Disney. Like, he says, I don't feel bad anymore. And I said, how do you feel about us now? I mean, the first time he went on a plane, he was like 15. And I said, how do you feel about that as well? He goes, you know, Mom, the one thing you guys gave me was love. Like, I mean, we didn't have all these things. Like, you gave me all the best you could, but I knew you loved me. I never never did I think you did not love me.
Right. And they know that you, no matter what circumstance you were in financially or with resources, that never stopped you from being creative, from finding ways
Yeah.
to show your love, to show how much you
Yeah.
cared, to come up with things. And yeah, with Disney, absolutely, you protected him by not bringing
in
him
a way,
there.
that's what I said to him. But what I'm going to say to you guys, as you got, sometimes it's better to raise money for really good toys for your babies. Meaning, don't go for cheap shit that's just 99-cent garbage. Go for really educational toys, for things that are bring magic and memories to them. When they're like 18, 19, they look back going, fuck, that was really a lot of fun. You know, that pedal car, or that Lego set that I had,
Right.
whatever. Like try to don't just go for the okie doke, right? And like the iPad, like I didn't have credit. Well, when you're poor, you don't have good credit. That's without saying. So we didn't have credit. So I didn't have credit cards to just slam on, you know, like a toy. So it did take planning. But I'm going to tell you something. He knew I was saving the money for that.
Mm-hmm.
He's 8 years old. He knew I was saving the money for that. And I said to him, you will have it on Christmas Day. I promised him. Guess what? He got it on Christmas Day.
Right.
And he was shocked because he knew what we were struggling through, right? And it's important for them to know, if you are lower income, don't protect them from that. They're not stupid, for one. But when you're doing something for them, it's not to guilt them out. It's not to make them guilty. It's for them to know that you love them so much. You're going to do this. They're going to get it. Don't worry. I'm not going to fuck you over. You can trust me, because I want you to have, for multiple reasons, I want you to have this. It's good for you. But also, we have to do this. Guess what happened because of that? He's very good at saving money.
Right. And he knows what real value is and what real appreciation is, and how to respectfully treat his things, and how hard you work for things is a direct correlation to how much you appreciate them and how much you respect them and take care of them.
Yeah.
And it's so important to say that the experiences that you give, that you can't pay money for, that's the most important. That's more important than any object or thing. And I can say I had a really, you know, a very clear perspective growing up of kids that literally had nothing, that had more lower income families, but they always did things as a family and went out of their way to make these really amazing, engaging experiences, whether it's, you know, at the park or Discovery Museum, or in my case, just spending that time with my dad, watching, you know, we didn't have money to do a lot of stuff, but way more than going to maybe Disney or something else like that. I valued that time with my dad where it was just us and we were talking, we were watching the boats, we were watching the airplanes. That is the richest experience. Right. And that was the most valuable experience that I had, more so than any other, you know, object or thing that money could buy. It was always about the experiences that money couldn't buy that were the most valuable, always.
Exactly. And I think, to be honest with you, I think it's also a balance, because you cannot, I think your experience was fantastic. One of the things, I'm just going to say it, there's certain religions that people follow that are abusive to children's ability to experience magic.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And I'm going to say something. If you are following a religion that is impeding your ability out of guilt to give your child magic, you're in the wrong religions, my friend. I'm straight up. Fucking leave the religion. And I'm not going to mention any religion. You know what the religions I'm referring to. They're religions that are fanatical, that refuse to celebrate birthdays, Christmas, that refuse to celebrate X, Y, and Z. There's no gifts. There's never anything. It's a stripping away of a child's ability to have magic. Like with my son, I used to do the tooth fairy. And he would write letters to the tooth fairy. And of course, me at 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm writing a fucking response to the tooth, me, I was the tooth fairy. And we would write letters under his pillows, right? And this went on for years. And so, but that gave my son the ability to tell me things, well, not me, to the tooth fairy. My parents are really a pain in the ass, you know, things like that. What do you think I should do with my parents? And they're very angry at me right now, or whatever, right? And the tooth fairy would give him responses to help him. Well, maybe you're not really listening. Have you thought that maybe you're being rude to your father or whatever? And maybe, so, I mean, I feel as if, just think about what kind of magic you would have wanted for your parents that maybe you didn't get, and give it to your children. You know, from the very moment that they are in your arms, this magic of a human being, this is a soul that chose you. It chose you. And what's interesting about the parent who is just sitting there staring at her kid, what's interesting is that this child chose her for that emptiness for a reason, because that emptiness is going to make the child eventually leave that family, I can assure you, and seek out the answers and open herself, hopefully spiritually, to what life, the magic of life, because she never received it at home.
Right.
So she's very thirsty for magic. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it just like really underscores that point where it's not about money, because clearly this mom and, you know, from their furniture and how they were dressed had a ton of money. They look, you know, and were wearing designer clothes, and I mean, it was such an interesting juxtaposition there, because you're like, how could a parent, you know, with all this money and all these resources not know how to raise a child, like not be completely clueless on reading to your child at the bare minimum, watching an educational program, just like, oh, we just sit around and watch like, you know, reality TV and just stare at each other. Like, what? Yeah. How do you have all this all this money and resources that's evident around you and not know anything about how to help or raise your child?
Well, you would think that they would want to just have fun with their kid. Like, you know, you buy a tea set and you buy something that will make you fun. It's fun. I mean, stuff like that. Or like I said, the museums, like, you know, in the Northern Simon, if you guys live in Pasadena, California, or close, I highly recommend it. Downstairs is what we call the Buddhas. We would go visit the Buddhas. And then we would go see the mulberry tree by Van Gogh, which is right there. And when you give your children an expression, like his favorite painter when he was like 8 or 9 was Gauguin, Paul Gauguin. Well, why? Well, because he was exposed to it. So suddenly he started painting. you are actually lobotomizing your child before the child even has an ability to go out into the world. If you don't expose them to, like you were saying, airplanes. Well, his father loved airplanes. He wanted to be a pilot. So they would go to the airport as well and look at planes taking off. So it's these things, all of these activities that come from different points of views, because you have hopefully two parents or whatever, males and females who are parenting children need to do and actively seek to enrich their child's brain. And like when your father was saying, where do you think that plane's going? Oh, Spain. Oh, yeah, I went to Spain, and having a dialogue about a different country. All of that is magnificent and it's magical. And like you're saying, the boats, and where's that boat going? And talking about marine life. All of these things are magical. Going to the observatory and looking at stars and planets, and then doing a project on, I don't know, a particular planet or star system, or who discovered this star or whatever, or scientist that was looking into the skies for answers. And then it goes into spiritual dialogue, in my case, being that parent. But I remember, I'm going to tell you a story that's really interesting, because we're talking about this. This woman was a single mother, and she was, her son had been diagnosed with autism, I think, at the age of 2 or 3, which I think is kind of young, kind of like people diagnosing toddlers with bipolar disorder, which I think is a crime. It's a crime. But anyway, moving on. Oh, and then let's go back to that, Celtic Canary, on it, how soon can you, as a psychologist that you are, how soon should we diagnose someone with bipolar? I think 18 months is a little weird. I think 3 years, I don't think you're there. But let me go back to that in a minute, but let me finish this story, because it'll give a lot of you hope who have kids on the spectrum, who are nonverbal, who you've just got the diagnosis of autism. Okay, so this one, single mother, had no money, obviously, and we would take her son out, and they would lay on the roof of the car and look at the skies. By the time she could afford to take him to an observatory, I think he was 4.5. And as they were in the observatory, his little child's voice was like pointing to, and he knew all the stars, all the planets, all that shit, because she'd been talking to him about it. They were so impressed that they wanted to mentor him. One of the persons came up and said, I want to talk to you about it. He's brilliant. And guess what? He ended up going to university at the age of 12. By the time he was 14, he was doing calculus. If she had, you know what they said about her son when he was 3? Oh, he'll be a vegetable. He'll be in a hospital. You need to just medicate him.
Wow.
She didn't
That's so
listen.
sad.
But the thing is, she didn't listen.
Right.
And when I tell to all of you mothers, mama bears and cougars and lionesses and papa bears, you are the expert. They aren't. A lot of no offense to you, Celtic. I know you.
No, not at all. Not at all.
PhD, but they don't know what you know about your child. They're not there hour by hour. And if you're not doing this, if you're like what Celtic was saying about, just sitting there staring at your kid, then yeah, you don't know your kid. Sorry, you don't know shit about your kid. These experiences that is going to excavate your child's passion have to be experienced. Your kid may be bored by airplanes. Okay, got it. Let's do, but love art or love gardens or love whatever it is. And you can't understand that and know your kid until you expose them to everything.
Absolutely.
In the light of the light. Okay. And so what I'm going to say, I'm going to ask you, when my son was born in 2000, in around the beginnings of 2000, by 2006 or 7, I'd heard about babies, toddlers being diagnosed as bipolar immediately on the meds. Can you tell me if this is a protocol, or if you've heard about it, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. So before I answer that, I just want to say that it is so important. If it doesn't matter, a doctor, a specialist tells you something like that about your kid when they're that young, please go search out other people, get second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth opinions. Do not, when it comes down to it, medicine is still a practice, right? Just like education in many ways. And that's where that discernment and that judgment, as a parent in tune with your kid is so important, because if you're being told, something like that by a doctor or whoever, that your child just going to be a vegetable, and there's something in you that's like, well, okay, you're the expert, but something just telling me that's not right, or that's not sitting right. Listen to that. That's so much more important to listen to than just one person's opinion. It doesn't matter how many initials they have behind their name, how educated they are. Honestly, when it comes down to it, that shit doesn't matter, and I mean, this is coming from somebody that spent many years in school, and I have, degrees and credentials, but honestly, when it comes down to that, the most powerful is your intuition. The most powerful is your real world experience, and that discernment of knowing, does that at the base level not feel right to you? Then seek out other information, seek out other opinions. Don't just seek out, or believe what one person or one doctor is telling you, especially when they're that young. And there's so many things that can change along the way.
Exactly. So I want to step in real quick and talk about autism and the brain. So there are a lot of agreements now. Many of you have read the books on the gut and brain connection, which came out of autism. People weren't talking like that. I can tell you for a fact, in 2002, 2003, it was revealed because Dr. Wakefield came up with an article in the Lancet Journal in 1998. I won't go into it because it's very controversial, and he was witch hunted. But what I will say is he first talked about the gut, brain, and the leaky gut syndrome with the brain. Now we all know this is true. Now, with that said, what did I do? And I'm going to share with you, because my son speaks 3 languages and he's brilliant. Okay. And it had a lot to do with, we had to actively feed him. So one of the things we realized is that he needed omega 3, 6, and 9. So we were buying Udo's oil, omega 3, 6, and 9, and mixing it in his syrup to make pancakes, gluten-free pancakes, everything for years. I'm talking about the first 14 years of his life was gluten-free. Okay. And that's important. I would also add Nordic oils, which was fish oils. We were also using Kangen water. I am not joking. We couldn't afford the machine. We never could, actually. So I would go and buy my containers and then go and get Kangen water filled. Why? Because it has a pH balance that will hydrate your brain, the brain. Some people have gone through strokes or other traumatic brain injuries, and the dehydration of the brain is a problem. So that would hydrate the brain, Kangen. The other thing we did besides doing that was we were pushing a lot of homeopathic. I was working with a Western homeopath and looking, and she was doing muscle testing to see what he needed. If they start telling you need pharma, you're having the wrong conversation. Because the behavior is one or two things. The behavior of a child going from forgetting what today, yesterday, whatever is, which happens with autism, to having linear consciousness. What does that mean? They know that yesterday was Wednesday, today's Thursday, tomorrow's Friday. That's what I mean. And in occupational therapy, what they do is they put cards, it's like a jumbled of cards where the sun is rising and the person is going to bed. They're getting out of bed, and at the end of the day, right at the end of the cards, they're in bed. They're sleeping. The moon, the sun, the this, the that, and the child has to put the cards in order, right? And that's understanding linear timelines, which for many of these children, they don't understand, because many of them are starseeds who have not incarnated on this planet for fucking centuries. That's one of the problems, in my humble opinion. But what I will say to you is nutrition is going to be everything. If you're going to bring your food, your meat to your child, you need to go to Whole Foods or wherever, or get yourself a person that is farming, and you know for a fact that the feed that the animal is getting is organic, grass-fed, humanely put down. I'm being real here. You're going to go a quarter of a cow per family, because I'm a vegetarian, so I'm not going to tell you not to eat meat if you're eating meat. But if you're going to eat meat, like my son is an meat eater, I would go to the whole food counter and get the best shit I could get. It was not a lot. It was only for him, and it was a small amount, but it was enough for him. And so, what would have cost like a family of 5 who all ate meat, I don't know, $20 or $30, cost me 5. I can afford 5, and I would do it 2 or 3 times a week. where he had very, very good high level protein, the best salmon, the best, but no tuna, absolutely no mercury, no tuna fish sandwiches, no tuna wild, no mahi mahi, nothing crazy that has high mercury. That's a big deal. And then parasite cleansing.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, that's such a huge one. I feel like we could have almost an entirely separate conversation just on parasite cleansing and how here in the US it's like completely ignored by our medical system, where literally in every other developed nation and country they're doing it regularly. You can go to, you can get this stuff over the counter easily, and it's well known that all our food contains parasites, especially if we're eating sushi and other raw fishes and stuff like that. It's there's,
I gotta
there's,
go.
there's so many flaws.
I have to jump on the sushi, but Dot said the age of onset for major mental health illness is 16 to 24, roughly, because the brain is still growing, not 3. I agree, but I agree.
Yeah, that's I've seen that specifically too for like schizophrenia. That's when when those symptoms really start to emerge is early on in like high school, about 14ish is one of the earlier cases that I've seen. But when I went to grad school and I first started learning about kind of more infant bipolar disorders and stuff like that, other serious mood disorders, so much of that, depends on, the psychiatrist who you're going to obtain that diagnosis. Some psychiatrists, I mean, they have reputations because some parents, let's be honest, really want to pathologize their children for all kinds of other mental problems that they have, and will act just like any other specialty. You can seek out somebody that will give you that disorder or will give you that medication, even though it's not the correct thing or the correct diagnosis. But if you pay him enough, sure, you can get it. But that's where, doing this research is so important. And when I also worked, a lot with, programs with early identification, like Head Start preschool programs, where we start to see a lot of, these behavior and mood dysregulation disorders start to emerge. And I can't tell you that there's so much of what we see and what we're connecting with that has to do with what's happening at home. Has to do with their home life, what they're being exposed to. And it goes beyond just, food and diet, which is huge. It's a huge piece of it, but also, a lot of these kids come from families where the parents themselves or the guardians have significant mood and dysregulation problems themselves, and the kids are a lot of time just mirroring it and aren't shown how to cope with certain things, so it just becomes more exaggerated. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, you'll have parents that are having kids that are on psychiatric meds that already kind of end up producing early on some really negative effects in their child because of these other pharmas that they're on. And so these kids are already born with some really messed up brain chemistry.
No, right on. I get you on that. I think home life is very important. I agree with you. And home life can be extended home life. What does that mean? It could be after the Menendez case. I think we can understand that sometimes it is home life, but we also have uncles. We have pedos that are uncles and aunts. We have extended people. We have the babysitter.
Right.
So we need to kind of step back and not think that it's just a home life, though I agree with you quite often. I mean, you just showed me an example of a woman saying, what do I do with this kid? And she's got money. I mean, it's pathetic. But with that said, but we also have to remember that there are predators that will come into the boyfriends, that these women just, I don't know what's wrong with them. They will not let go of these toxic, disgusting boyfriends or losers who are playing with their daughter or sons, and they could be very young. I mean, babies even, okay? I'm going to say it straight up. Because I remember I had a client, and she wasn't a client for long, because she was on the system and this and that, and she started telling me, yeah, he's peeing in the bed. And I was like, how old is he? She goes, well, he's 9. I go, did he ever pee in the bed? No. it's a classic case of something is hurting that person, that little child. Peeing in the bed out of nowhere is not normal unless there's is a physical issue or there's a psychological trauma happening. We kind of know what I'm saying. So, but I can't tell you how many clueless women are out there because they're bringing in. So when you say home life, they're bringing in someone in the home life. And I had another client who was the babysitter from the age of 5 until he was 9.
Yeah.
Okay. And particularly in the autistic community, nonverbal or verbal autistic community of these children, because they have behavioral issues, because they're stymieing or whatever the hell they're doing, right? Right. The perpetrator, the predator, knows that no one will believe the child. No one. And so they're doing this shit for however many years that's allowed. And so when we say, and this is when I'm going to warn you, educators, not teachers, because I already fucking know you who you are, but educators, you who actually give a shit about these kids and give a shit about your career and have loving hearts like you, Cosmic. And it's like what's happening is that there is abuses. Pedos don't care about if the kid's verbal or not.
No. In fact, they look for that. They're easier prey if they're not verbal. They're easier prey if they have special needs. And unfortunately, I think, I don't know how much I want to share about this, but this is a conversation that Tony and I had earlier about a school that I was at. And this is happening all the time. And you have teachers that specifically want to work with special needs kids and do whatever they can to have as much one-on-one time with them by themselves.
Thank you.
And will purposely go out of their way to make sure that there's no other adults in the room with them, that they have all the blinds closed, that the doors closed, everything's dim lighting, and I had so many other teachers and other counselors come to me and ask, why is this happening? Why is this allowed to continue? Like, what do you know this is going on? I'm like, yeah, I know this is going on. The administration knows it's going on, but they're doing nothing about it.
And you as parents need to be there. Yeah. You guys, you need to walk in on those fucking moments. You need to walk in and go, yeah, I'm just picking up my son. We have an emergency. I got to pick him up. Or my daughter. If you know this is happening, or if you don't know what's fun, if you're not volunteering in your school, like taking a day off to volunteer, I'm calling you, shame on you. I volunteered so often. And I would pick up all this fucked up, and parents would come to me. Some parents, like with neurotypical, would go, he's being bullied by blah, blah, blah. And then I would set it up in the IP to the point where the principal of the school barred me for walking ever going back into the classroom. Okay.
Because you were doing the right thing, because you were standing.
The minute that happens, game over, pull your kid out of school.
Yeah.
What I regret, and I'm going to tell you, what I regret, and I'm not going to go into it today because it's private. What I regret, he was not molested, but something else happened that was close to it. Okay, I'm just saying, is I didn't fucking just lose my shit and pull him out that day, and I should have. That's what I regret. But we all have regrets. But the point is, it continues. There's still massive activation of healing of damage. To be honest with you, I'm going to give you an example so you guys. So let's say you put your kid, like I put my kid in Montessori, right? Which is, Montessoris are not created equal, but find the one that looks like it is incredible. And he had wonderful female teachers. And he was using his fingers as an abacus. I mentioned that in one of my lives, an abacus, right? Within 6 months, and they all said he was first grade level. This was, he had just finished preschool, kindergarten, whatever. And he was first grade level. By the time I lent them, okay, he was there in the public school first grade, he had regressed. He couldn't even figure out how to use his fingers. When I had a meeting with a teacher and she said, well, I don't let him I don't let him use his fingers. I go, you mean like an abacus? Do you know she didn't even know what the fuck an abacus was, number one? That's number one. Number two, he had regressed so poorly he didn't want to do math anymore. And math was his favorite subject. Now, recently, I found out, and this is completely woohoo to many of you who are going to listen, and I don't care. The Anunnaki would use their fingers. The Sumerians would use their fingers. I'm going to say Sumerian, They would use, you know how you have those little lines on your fingers, on your pinky, you have 3 lines, and then your index finger and so forth. They would use their fingers to count in tens, those lines on our fingers. So counting with your hands is an ancient practice, and it shows intelligence. Because if you've ever seen an abacus used by the Chinese in China and Hong Kong, right? They use abacus to count, which it's very hard to figure out. But it is an ancient practice. So it's a primal thing that we learn. So to take away his love of math, at that point, I'm just giving you advice as parents, I would have pulled him out. Today, the woman I am today, fuck, even 10 years ago, I would have pulled him out and said, game over, we're done. Fuck you. You know, giving you a kid that was above grade level, and now you return a kid that's actually regressed. Fuck you. And I want you to be okay with that, parents out there, whoever you are, you know, male, female, whatever, because that's going to be your saving grace. Because let me tell you something, all these MFers that you're listening to, they're not going to, and I used to say that in IEPs, certain IEPs where I got really ferocious like this. I would say, it's interesting how you're making decisions on my son, whose name you will not know in 10 years. But the results of your decision, I will be looking at an 18-year-old, and I will be facing the results of your decision. So when I say no, I'm not just saying no because it's personal. I'm saying no because in 10 years, you won't even remember his face, much less his name. And this is not going to benefit my son. Game over.
Yeah.
And you have to have the balls to do that. And it takes balls. You cannot, and this is, I love that you have you've studied your ass off. I completely respect your PhD. I completely respect it because you have heart and soul and you had to leave the system to keep your integrity. But let me say, don't just fucking bow to everybody that has a PhD. She's different. Celtic Canary is completely different. But you know what? Those, like Celtic Canary, I watch them. They'll last maybe 5 years at most and eventually leave. Just like good cops leave in 5 years. Very, very good cops leave in 5 years. Very, very good educators leave in 5 years. They end up having their own practice. They can't play the game anymore. It's cruel. And she just told you about a situation where there's no doubt that something nefarious, essaying, was happening to these children, and it was being allowed.
Yeah. And I just want to say I was just a contractor for that particular school, but I absolutely did turn the entire school into CPS. I called and I reported everything. You know, and we are mandated reporters, you know, and there's no way I was going to leave with that on my conscience and have that many people tell me what was happening and not do anything about it. I was like, absolutely not. And I followed up, and that teacher is no longer there. But what blows my mind is that particular teacher is now working in a broader school system with even more access to more kids. Exactly. And that's unfortunately what happens. No, that's what happens.
That's what happens. They just move these MFers away. Let me read this real quick. Nalani, hello. So she's talking about the person who knew Jenny McCarthy, who's mentioned in the book. His name, okay, hang on. The book's name is Mother Warriors. I have the direct contact. He lives in Simi Valley. His cure methods for autism implants. And she's saying if you want to provide it to anyone, she'll provide you the information on this doctor if you have a kid on the spectrum. But make sure that you understand that chelation, however you want to pronounce it, chelation can be dangerous if you do it too fast. It can actually give a person a problem, like a seizure. So you want to make sure that, in fact, most of the herbalists, and I'm not saying that you're saying that, Nalani, I'm saying that you may decide you want to do chelation, and you have to understand that there's a process, or else you can actually damage the brain because too much toxins are coming out, like aluminums and formaldehyde, and depending on how old your kid was, mercury, because that was still in the you-know-whats, and things of that nature, if that makes sense. Okay? But the fact that you did this, let me ask you this. As you were watching this behavior happening with this teacher who has simply been moved to a place where he has more access to his victims, would you then call CPS and go, I can't believe you haven't done more actions? So what the fuck are you doing? Meanwhile, Allie Carter's come out saying that CPS is part of the problem in Riverside County.
Right. I know, and that's the other absolutely corrupt, beyond corrupt aspect of the situation, is because, now we are even more hyper aware that CPS plays a role, and especially with, we heard that with the whole Diddy scandal as well,
Yeah.
that CPS was providing them with these kids.
Right.
And so the distrust for the system runs so deep, and it's so sad that, I mean, in so many, I've had to have many interactions with CPS throughout my 14 years of so far as a psychologist and an educator, and very little have I ever seen anything positively done by CPS, that things that I thought were actually going to be helpful or beneficial to the child. And now that distrust and that skepticism runs even deeper now, of what do I do? How, I mean, at the end of the day, we are still mandated reporters. So I just keep, reporting reporting what I can. I no longer have I'm no longer in that, work in that state anymore. And so that whole process is different. But I still talk to other educators that I work with, and I encourage them. I'm like, if you should report him, continue to report him, because,
Yes.
and this is a good conversation to have, because of what these predators look like, what their profile is. Their profile is often that they are, higher up on, they're more high profile in the school district. So a lot of people know who they are. They're usually coaches of some kind. And this particular one, was a girls basketball coach. And, and of course what they do is they, go out of their way to build, trust and rapport, so that the parents feel more comfortable leaving their children with them. And that's part of the game. They want to build that, and they want to build that perception of, oh, well, everybody, he's so high profile and liked by everybody, and he's so involved. How could he ever do anything wrong? Nope.
And we saw the gym coach in 2018 who came out, and he had basically essayed like 175 gymnasts.
Right.
That doctor. Yeah, I don't think he was a coach. He was an OBGYN. Number one, why are we allowing masculine OBGYNs to touch ourselves as females, much less our girls?
Right.
Hello, let's wake up, ladies. Male hating bullshit is not okay, but common sense on that is to be adhered to. You don't put your legs on your stirrup or ask a 14-year-old for a male OBGYN. Don't fucking do it. Don't allow it done. Don't do it. That's it. If they go to summer camp and that comes up, then you better say, is she a woman? It is right. Don't be politically correct, my friends, because they love the passivity, the apathy, the shy.
Yes.
You better become a lion, man. Fuck that. Wait, hang on. You take my kid to an OBGYN for what? Oh, well, and what's the doctor's name? Oh, it's Dr. Williams. Doctor's name. Is it Shelley Williams? No, it's Paul Williams. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. They're good men, don't get me wrong. But this is Russian roulette. We can't play that game. This is when you become absolutely, completely politically incorrect in these terms and the mores that have been accepted in our society, which include gender conversation. If you have a public school that's playing that game over. Because CPS will come. We're seeing too many women, families losing custody of their children, and they're brainwashing these kids for nefarious reasons. Why? I don't know. Do I care? No, because I don't want the end result. You're going to have to be very, very powerful in your stance to protect. You did not have those kids to get fucked up. If you're going to fuck up your kid, let it be you. Okay, I'm just going to say, let it be you that fucks him up, but not some outside forces. Yes. Right? What do you think?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And I think what ends up happening is it's almost like it's a trauma response in a lot of ways, where people are like knowing that something's going on, or either, like, because the predators work so hard on desensitizing everybody around them by slowly, either touching kids around them, whether it's on their shoulder or their back or their, and then having this reputation of such an upstanding guy that it's almost when you're hearing these things happen or hearing the suspicion or really like, hearing, okay, there's clearly somebody who is doing this in the dark with kids and all the things all the blinds are closed. Obviously somebody that is not there to harm kids would never be doing that. But yet everybody is in this state of almost disbelief and shock, right? Where it's like, where you gaslight yourself, where you're like, could this really be happening? Oh no, this really, so that, and they love that, like you said, that apathy, that kind of, you go back, that ambivalence of like, oh no, you're arguing with yourself internally almost like, oh, this can't be happening. But that's what they rely on.
Well, look at Willie Smith. What's his name? What's his name? Will Smith. Will Smith, like grabbing his son. And I'm sorry, I love my son. Okay, but I would never do that to my son. My husband loved our son. He didn't grab him to kiss him on the lips. It's just bizarre. A hug, yes. A nice warm bear hug, absolutely. A grabbing and forcing, no. Jenny McCarthy forcing Justin Bieber in that award, like grabbing his ass, and he's like 15, 16. No, I mean, I'm sorry. We need to stop, okay? Biden sniffing children.
Yeah.
Okay?
So disgusting.
Trump locker room talk, and he got recorded on the locker room talk, but it's locker room talk every man does. I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm saying every man that's got toxic qualities will say, but I've never seen Trump sniff children. I've seen millions of footages, I'm not kidding when I'm saying of Biden sniffing children.
Yeah.
Touching them inappropriately. And you can see the kid, like, I've never seen Trump do that. It's not to support Trump, don't get me wrong. But I do know that men of his age and men today talk massive shit about chicks behind closed doors when they don't think anyone else is listening. That's classic shit. Mm-hmm. All the men do it. There are some men that will call them out. My husband, I know Rachel's husband, other husbands, but for the most part, but I've never seen him sniff some 12-year-old, and it doesn't matter with Biden. And when we have a leader who does this with impunity, he's continued. You can see in gray. I mean, from a senator to now, we've seen it across. That's why I say millions of footages, because it's millions of footages. I keep seeing, and it's always a different kid. I'm like, what the fuck? Isn't anybody? If anyone needs pharma, it's him. Like somebody, please. Like I don't know. And I think that we have become so. Like we're not connecting the dots. We're letting when your 3-year-old doesn't want to sit on Auntie Melba's lap or Billy John or Uncle Bob, leave your kid the fuck alone. If they don't want to kiss grandma or grandpa, leave your fucking kid alone. Do not force the issue, because you are setting it up so that a predator, who maybe even in the family, let's be honest, will come in and do whatever the hell. Look at Menendez. What's sickening about that whole family dynamic is they all knew it. Mm-hmm. The aunt and the grandmother and the sister knew it. The boys went up to them and told them, and they went to the mother, right, Kitty, and it was shut down at that point. CPS should have been called.
Yeah,
and then they would still be alive. So to be honest, when we talk about the pew-pews they use. Everyone pulled that trigger with their silence. Everyone in that family pulled the trigger because they all heard the stories. Right. So we need to be very, very protective. If your child says no, it's fucking no. Yeah. Your job when you're washing your kid until eventually, because I remember my 5-year-old in the shower, he goes, you know what? No, sweetie, here's your washcloth, here's your soap. Those are your genitals. No one touches them except two. And he mentioned his pediatrician's name, a woman. And he said, and no one else, right, baby? Because you're good. And he would ask me to wash because he was used to it. And eventually got the hint, no, you're good enough. Did you wash your toes? Did you wash? And you need me. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. You're safe. But I gave him autonomy of his body from the time he could understand. This is going to be very important. And you keep saying, baby, this is your stuff. No one touches it except who? Yes, the pediatrician. That's it. Why? Because you're making sure you're healthy.
Right. Absolutely. And it's always a red flag if you have a doctor, an adult, a teacher with these young kids like that you know are going to be having close contact, and they don't want you in the room, or they don't want another adult in the room, that is a red flag. It doesn't matter what they tell you. It doesn't matter, oh, well, this is just protocol. Oh, or they're going to feel more. No. Especially when they're that young. No, you have every right as a parent and should be in that room, or at least right next to it, able to see in and know what's going on.
No, you should be in that room. Let me tell you why. I was in Switzerland. I was 8 years old. I'll never forget. My brother was like, 2 years old. My mom was in that room with the pediatrician, who was a man. His back was to her. I was on the table facing the wall. And I felt he was touching me in a way that I would call caressing me. And touching me in parts that I knew wasn't appropriate, but I wasn't able to. I was like deer in the headlights. And I'll never forget that. And she was in that room. So I'm going to actually tell you better. If the back of the pediatrician is to you, male or female, by the way, I want you to put yourself at the feet so you can look directly in your line, and you can see, and I want you to look at your child's expression. If there's any point where there's uncomfortable, you can say, I think we're done with the examination now. Thank you. I'll dress my daughter or my son. We're done. That's Absolutely. It. Leave. It's like a bad meal. If you had a bad meal at a restaurant, you'd leave. I hope you'd leave. Well, it's the same. Leave. Just take your kid off the table, dress them up. If you're getting any kind of hit, I'd rather you be paranoid and rude than you going, fuck, why didn't I leave?
Absolutely. And I think we, have been brainwashed and controlled to the point where we feel like if we're saying no, or we look at it as like we're interfering with somebody else's job, or that we're doing something bad, and that's bullshit. That's not what's happening. We need to feel empowered to be like, you know what? No, sorry. Nope, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't look right. Yeah. We're done. And I think so many people are so hesitant to say, oh, no, or put an end to it, or walk out. I mean, this even goes, all the way to, that's dating advice, right? Yeah. Don't feel obligated to sit there and eat with some person that gives you the creeps. And that's like obviously telling you things that you're like, oh, dude, I would never want to spend time with this person beyond this. You have every right to get the fuck out of there, to leave, to be like, I'm done. Thank you. You don't need you don't need to be polite about it. If everything in your body is telling you no, then go.
Exactly. And yes, he says, I wish my mom cared enough. It's not that she cares enough. Let's go right into it. The sad part about people having children is that they are, and women in particular, I'm just going to say women in particular, is they are so desperate to have a man. They'll do anything to have a man. It doesn't matter if the man's a drug addict, a thief, a piece of shit, a bad lover. It doesn't even matter if he can't even make you go get the big O. Okay? It doesn't matter. Just saying I have a man. Like there are many, many women who are in my age group and a little younger, but 20 years, whatever, who literally will do anything to have a man, including not listening to their daughters, their sons. They don't give a fuck. It's a revolving door. There's a great movie that I always talk about because it's telepathy. It's about twin flames. And it's about what happens when these women do what they do. Because the end result is the psychopath. I won't tell you the whole story, but the movie is called The Eyes of Laura Mars with Faye Dunaway and Tommy Lee Jones. It's called, again, The Eyes of Laura Mars, made in 1979. Actually, it's an incredible movie. And if you guys are into modeling and fashion, you'll love it. But it's about twin flames gone wrong, like way, way wrong. And people, oh, it can't be a twin flame if it's toxic. Yes, it can. We're human experience. We're having human experience. But off the beaten track, what the end of the movie is about, when he exposes himself to her and says, this is why I've done it, it's the mother. Now, many of you might get totally triggered, but I'm going to tell you the truth. We are the first point of contact. You have to understand, this beautiful infant chose you to be the conduit, the womb, to bring you into to be brought into this world. It slips out from between your legs if you're blessed, okay, or you have a C-section, but it slips out, and the first person that touches them, I hope for you, is you. No, not the doctor, You're putting your head on the crown as they're crowning. You're putting your fingers on the top of their crown chakra. Your first touch is yours. And here you are, so hell-bent on having a man that you don't care. And to be honest with you, and there are other women, there's a particular woman that's a friend of my son's, she's an amazing woman. She has decided to be celibate. This is a young woman who's an athlete, who's got an incredible body, beautiful face, who could have anyone she wants, has made a commitment to her 8-year-old daughter to be celibate until the kid's old enough, maybe 14, 15. I'm not joking. For her safety. If you're going to have a kid, understand the commitment it takes.
Right.
Okay? You can't just fuck around. At 14, your kid's going to be able to maneuver certainly and tell you shit. And if you've done your job right, your kid will come to you and say, this is happening, that's happening, this is happening. Oh, by the way, that also has happened. At 14, 15, it's appropriate, okay? You want to date. But you need to establish from the giddy up a relationship where your kid will come to you and say any fucking, including, I'm taking drugs, mom, I'm doing this, I've lost my virginity. If you don't have that relationship, I'm going to say, shame on you. It's the 21st century. What the fuck are you doing with your kids? It's not 1950, my friend.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because then you're just, I mean, and that's like the bare minimum, right? Like making that commitment to your daughter. Hey, I'm not going to bring any other strangers around you. It doesn't matter how much mommy likes them or wants to, the fact is that you don't know them. They're not your dad. They're, they're not somebody that, and unfortunately this happens with family members too, but a trusted family member. I mean, you can't trust people. I mean, you can't trust people. And there's a beautiful African-American woman who has, who's a little hefty, but she's got a beautiful face. And when I say but, and the reason why I say hefty, and I'll tell you why, because many of us who've been actually, and I include myself when I say many of us who have been molested or assayed or whatever, we have a weight problem. It'll fluctuate 20 pounds, 30 pounds, or 100 pounds, 200 pounds, okay? To be honest. It usually isn't just because it was a great childhood. Because part of the reason why people put on weight, men and women as well, by the way, who struggle with that, it's usually 20 to 50 pounds typically. Right. It's because it feels safe, because now most of them are handsome or beautiful. It's not good looks that makes you, don't get me wrong when I say that, because I sound stupid saying it. It's the truth. I mean, this is what you see in the clinic, and it's a clinical picture of why there's so much obesity, and you even see this on I forget what it's another like reality TV show, but it's about addiction, and you always see the people that are significantly overweight, clinically obese, 9 times out of 10, almost without fail, that what brought the onset of this severe eating disorder and their weight is because of some type of childhood sexual, SA, something like that.
Exactly. Because why? Because they're protected, because they don't want to be attractive.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Protect themselves.
That's 100% true.
Right. Okay. So let me tell you, so if you are raising a child and they're always fit and suddenly they start packing on weight, something happened.
Yeah.
Something happened, because it doesn't just do itself. Okay. It doesn't, the other addictions will be from other things, or including that. And not everyone's going to do that. Some people will actually become very, sex overt, and have multiple partners, or they'll just go right into the hard shit, drugs. So, but the point, what I'm trying to say is that one of the things that you really need to give yourself the gift is that if you see something going wrong with a child that isn't yours, say something. Don't say it's not my business, because it will haunt you. It will haunt you if you say nothing. And when I say something, I don't mean call CPS, clearly. I mean, like, talk to the parent and go, I'm noticing that little Jilly is acting blah, blah, blah. And if she blows you off, like what happened when I think it was Lyle that came up to one of the cousins and said, this is what's happening, I'm hurting. And this was ignored. Then there was a letter. And then there was a cousin who ended up committing, who unalivened himself because he couldn't handle the fact that he knew what was going on with Lyle and Eric, and nothing was done. And the family must, the whole entire, that's what I'm saying. Whoever, the whole family pulled the trigger with their apathy. It wasn't just the boys. And they were brainwashed into that. And what I'm saying to you is like, whatever you do, I know you had children because you wanted to have, to love them, to see maybe, them growing up and laughing. And then eventually maybe you're excited by having grandchildren. Just, I don't know, whatever. But the point is, it wasn't to just destroy them. I hope not. And so that means that whatever it takes, if you lose friends and family, fuck them. Like, who gives a shit? Who wants that in your circle? You want to be safe. And for many of you who are single mothers, I'm going to counsel you. You want to get laid? Then, I don't know, go in a motel, make sure you have a friend, a female friend, hopefully. I'm sorry to say that, but there you go. That you really, really trust with your fucking life. And if that's not the answer, and I'm going to tell you, with our son, one of the things that destroyed our marriage, and by the way, I'm not blaming my son. What I'm saying is, it was the stress, the poverty, the system that basically, after years and years of IEPs, you start shutting down. But long story short, we never had a babysitter with my son. Never. We were never going to have anyone watch him. No one watched him until he was 6 years old because I had a heart attack, and so Nick, my husband at the time, came to the hospital to visit me. And then a week later, we decided to have a dinner. And to be honest with you, these were my best girlfriends. Like, I would trust them with my life. And they both came over because they knew we were kind of funny about even leaving our son with them. But so they both babysat him. So there was no malarkey. And they enjoyed it. They loved my son. But what I'm saying to you is, the first time we had a date after 6 years of our child being in our lives, it was when they came over to handle that business. And we had our first meal together alone in 6 years. Those are the sacrifices you're going to have to make. Because I've heard way too much stories from my clients, from the babysitter to the uncle, to the grandfather, to the grandmother, to the aunt. The list goes on. It goes on and on and on. So you want to make sure that your kid could articulate if something went right. And the reason why we left him at 6 is at that point he could talk. And he could explain what was going on. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And you give him language as well, which is huge. To be able to, articulate to you if something happened to him, and how to tell you how to recognize it and how to describe it. And that's another thing that parents really shy away from is letting their children know, hey, if this does happen to you, you can tell me and you can describe it like this, because it's important to know exactly what happened.
Yeah, and then Yessie says, I had to wear baggy clothes around my mom's boyfriend. Now, take note, okay? Yessie is not a teenage girl, just so you know, in case you guys don't know. She's in, and I dress like a boy when I had to live in the house. Let me just say one thing. This is going to be hard for many of you, and Yessie as well, because Yessie's one of my clients, and we talk a lot about this stuff. Until that man is gone, this is when you have to walk away from your family. I'm sorry, because you are not here to strip your sexuality. And yes, he's not a girl that's wearing, mini skirts and all kinds of shit. Not that matters. I don't give a fuck if she is wearing a tennis skirt or a mini skirt. It's not his business. But what I'm saying is, she's not that girl, number one. So the fact that she has to even tone it down to that level where she's wearing baggy clothes and to look like a boy, I don't think people understand that. And yes, you need to listen to me on this. When men like that do that, in fact, it doesn't matter if you look like a boy. You're not getting the whole entire picture of this. It's about power. It's about knowing that they make you uncomfortable and they love it. It's like slurping milkshake. They love that. It doesn't matter if you're hot or look like a boy, if you are a boy, if you're trans, it doesn't matter. What your mother's not getting, which is pathetic, is that she is letting a predator in her house around her babies. Grown adult babies, granted, but babies. And she is so hell-bent on getting laid, because that's all I could imagine, that she is actually taking that as more important than her relationship. So when she ends up in hospice, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys visit her when it's convenient, instead of bringing her home to take care of her and changing her diapers. That's the price they're paying. When you treat people like your children like that, and because I've been in hospice with my mother dying and coming home to die, and and all of that, you reap what you sow. What does that mean? Well, I had hospice nurses from Las Vegas to California saying, oh yeah, I have children that just call up, adult children saying, yeah, call me when they're dead. Call me when they're dead. I'll never forget that line. You earn that. Parents like that, there's a story behind that. Call me when they're dead. It doesn't just happen because you were a great parent. Don't fucking gaslight yourself. It comes from, and Yessie, you may want to clip this to your mother. It comes when you make fucking decisions over losers, because he's a loser. Because if he was making money and he was a good man, and he dabbled with a couple things that were illegal and legal, and he drank a little. If he really wanted the poontang, he'd be buying it. And your mother would never know about it, and you would never be harassed by it. I'm being straight up. Some of these men out there, and you know what I'm talking about, the ones that sprinkle goes after, those are the men that have side chicks. We're talking about this. This is why I don't like women who don't like Andrew Tate, because at least he's honest. He's got a stable of bitches. They're on the payroll, and he's got 12 babies. He's honest, though, and he still buys it on the side. Men like that aren't going to sniff Yessie or other people or 14-year-old girls. That's not the man sniffing like Biden. Those men are dangerous. But there's a level of consciousness of honesty that we as women need to start like embracing. You've got this guy who's like Andrew Tate, like, who's totally honest. He doesn't give a shit if he offends your finer ears as a little lady, but he will never, ever push his shit on a woman who's not willing and wanting that attention. I can tell you, I've watched him. And then you've got Biden doing what he's doing. And then you've got poor thugs that are excited over subjugating women. Like, he knows, just so you know, he knows what he's doing to you when you come into that house. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he loves it. The concept of abuse and SA'd has nothing to do with how sexy you look, and we all know this, but let me repeat it. It has nothing to do with how old you are. There are women who are in the 80s, have been 90s, 100 who have been SA'd in nursing homes and in their own homes. We know it has nothing to do with that. It's about power. It's about the thrill of making someone afraid. And so if I were you, as an adult young woman, I wouldn't go into the house ever again. Never fucking again. Mom, you've just lost a daughter. You want to play that game? You're so afraid of being alone without a man? Then this is the price you pay. And I will call you on the phone. We can talk on the phone. We can continue our relationship, but I'm not physically going there. And that takes a lot of, it's up to you what you want to do. But honestly, so does anybody have do you have any comments on that, Cosmic?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Yessie, I just, I feel for you, and I want you to know that you're loved and supported no matter what you choose. But this is something that is happening at a level that it's unbelievable, right? I can't begin to wrap my head around how many women choose to, bring predators into their house knowing that they're predators. And knowing that the chances of them doing something that will either psychologically or physically harm their child and be okay with that,
or adult child,
any child at any age, a loved one. It doesn't, knowing that they could violate a loved one physically or mentally or otherwise, and still be okay with it because you yourself need that validation is it's sick, and it literally is psychologically sick. It's an illness.
So I'm going to say something to you guys, okay? I want you to start reframing how you see men, and I'm inviting you to have a new philosophy. Men who tell you they're pigs, honor them, because at least they're honest. I'll never marry. I only date. I have a stable of chicks. I'm a sugar daddy. Okay, good. At least now I know you're a pig, And that's good. There you go over there, but at least you're honest about it. There's the other man. I can't marry. I can't commit. I can never be faithful for you. Good. Okay. Over here. Then you got a guy like Andrew Tate. I got 10 chicks on the payroll. If I want something extra, I buy it. Good. You're over here. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, don't denigrate truth. What I don't like is men who play the game of, oh, I'm just devoted to you. Meanwhile, they're really there for the 19-year-old. I've heard so many comments, I can't tell you, on chats, not joking, where the man said, oh, yeah, I'm moving in with the old broad, but really, wow, what a sweet thing. She's 18 or she's 16. They're moving in not for the mother, poor thing, because she might never know. I'm going to train her. I've heard men say, I'm going to train this girl. I'm going to be the first one. The level, you've got to really do your research before you bring anyone in your life. Not just, even if all your kids are grown, you better actually go and become a detective. I mean, I don't do a background check. Do whatever before you bring a man into your heart and your life, into your home, much less your home, because and again, God bless him, because we just had an amazing live yesterday with a divine masculine who's amazing, who's a single father. He's a good man, and he's got the opposite going on, honestly. But with that said, to honor him, just so to make sure, my husband was an amazing man. My twin became an amazing man. My son is an amazing man. They're amazing men, okay, out there. But I want you to start looking at men who are honest about what they can and cannot do. Don't fucking, oh, well, I'll never listen to Andrew Tate or whatever. I'll never listen to some other guys. They're honest about their fuckery. They're not for you. That's not your man. You don't want a man like that. We all agree. But they have also a lot of wisdoms to share about the masculine mind. And if you decide not to listen to these men who talk, you'll never really understand men. In a way, as fucked up as these men are, they're your allies, because you get to learn about how men think. Not all men, but those men, which will help you avoid those kind of men. Mm-hmm. That there's a wisdom to listening to these people. Does that make sense? And we have to understand that. Meanwhile, and I'm just going to throw that out. It's completely, but he's been arrested back and forth, right? He's arrested being accused of trafficking. Ask yourself, when somebody's being accused of trafficking and all eyes are on that, who are they letting off? We just heard Cosmic Canary talking about a perpetrator in a public school simply moved to another sector, district, whatever. Mm-hmm. So when something is happening like P. Diddy, who are they protecting while all eyes on P. Diddy?
Right. He was just the hitman. He was just the one that took the fall for all these other people that, are nameless and faceless, that we know that there's definitely people above him that are pulling the strings, that have set them up, and they're just, it's like Hollywood. We know they're puppets, right? Just like the political landscape. We know that the people that are forward facing, that we see in the news, that are talking, that are, spewing their rhetoric, these are the puppets. They're doing what the people behind the scenes that we don't even know who they are. They're doing their bidding and their will because of all the other, financial gain usually that they get from it. Right.
So let me ask you this, in terms of the level of protection when you drop your kid at school and you have a kid with special aid. Let's say should you let them take the bus, meaning school bus? Should you let them? Should you just pop in unannounced and ask to volunteer, or ask to bring the lunch and it's a lie? What should you do to make sure, knowing that maybe they're in speech therapy or they've been pulled out because you have the schedule and should you do unannounced visits to make sure that your kid's not being subjected to something they can't articulate yet? What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of this, like that we've talked about, goes back to parent involvement, really knowing what's happening with your kid and not letting, the school and whoever else kind of dictate the amount or level of involvement or knowledge that you have around what's going on there and what your kid is doing. You have every right to be down there at the school unannounced, dropping off lunches, picking up, offering to volunteer. And they need to, frankly, they need to know that. They need to know that you can come by and stop by at any minute, because it's another layer of protection.
Exactly.
And it's so sad that, you know, school's supposed to be a safe place, right? Just like our homes are supposed to be a safe place. But because this world is filled with so many damaged, corrupt, and ill people, they are everywhere, in every system, in every family.
Yeah.
And we can't be naive about it. You know, we can't just stand there in this state of apathy or ambivalence or shock, and we have to act on our instincts. We have to act on that feeling of something isn't right here. I have every right to say no to even if my kids signed up for a field trip, or we went through all this meetings to get them on a bus. If I get a word of anything that doesn't feel right or seem right, that's it. We're pulling the plug away. We're not going back there. We're not going to engage in this scenario anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the bus is a whole other issue. There's countless stories of kids being bullied on buses, having other inappropriate things happen to them on buses.
SA, there's been from the bus driver to another child. Absolutely.
Yes. I mean, predators, that's the reality, will take any road or avenue they can to get kids that they know they can prey on, who are vulnerable, to do what they want to do with them and groom them. That's what they do. And in this particular teacher, what I know he was doing this, where he would he's alone in this class in the dark, almost, very dimly lit, with all these other really more, moderate to severe, more severely disabled kids.
Yeah.
And he's bringing them up, probably one or two at a time, and having them like sit on his lap, or having, the other kids are watching him like basically touch these kids, right? Like, first it starts on the arm, then the back, and then they try to normalize it. So that way, when it starts to progress and get more and more inappropriate, that there is that ambivalence of like, well, I've seen him, like, yeah, he touched this kid on the arm all the time, but maybe this time it was just a little bit lower, but that probably is nothing. That's what they want you to think. That's how they thrive.
This is why I've been doing a couple lives about the Menendez. I also shared what happened to my twins' brothers. All of them were, altar boys. And again, you cannot, I'm sorry. It's like we need to stop putting our heads in the sand because it's so unpleasant. I want you to know that whatever you do to protect your child, you will never regret it. Not one day. Never. But what you won't do to protect your child, it will haunt you till the last breath.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's heavy. It's heavy. I mean, I regret when the principal did what he did. I should have. And my husband was always, he was not apathetic, but he wanted me to calm down. As you can imagine, I was losing my shit. And they were about to call the cops. But I'm going to tell you something. The following day, he should have never gone back to school. Mm-hmm. It should have been over with a letter that said, we're done. And they had, and again, he was not SA'd, he was not molested, it was not, it was something else, which I won't go into, but it was not egregious enough to have a lawsuit against them. Mm-hmm. See, what they're looking for is SA'd. That's what they're looking for, anything that you would go under the category of molestation or whatever. Which the irony is that many of the kids won't be able to give you the information until they're way older, because there's a safety valve in all of us that blocks it until we're in our 20s. Thank God there's no statute of limitation, but that's the reality. That's why a lot of these kids that were molested during the Catholic era of that shit, many of them actually didn't remember until later. Some of them never forgot, but some of them didn't remember, and then suddenly they went into hypnotherapy, and it all came tumbling in. There's an incredible book that will rip you out. I'm sure you know it. It's called When Rabbits Howl. I've mentioned it before. When Rabbits Howl. And it's about a woman who went into hypnotherapy session and suddenly remembered what had happened with her stepfather from the time of 5. Her father was fantastic. Her father didn't even know this was happening, clearly. But she had an amazing relationship with her father. But the stepfather was doing that from the age of 5 until I think she was 14.
Wow.
That did not, and she was blacking out. In fact, she had multiple personality disorder because of it.
Right. You start to, with that amount of trauma,
Yeah.
you start to get that dissociative identity disorder or multiple personality disorders, because everything becomes so, your brain becomes so fragmented from trying to process and manage the trauma of what happened, because you have all these periods where you literally, you black out, your brain blocks it out for you. And then you basically, as a result, end up developing all these different types of states of minds, identities, to try and cope with it, and cope with, okay, I still have to be a functioning person or some type of a person in the everyday life, because I'm still here, I'm still a body on this planet, but I have all this stuff that's happened to me that I can't even process or fully even wrap my head around all that has gone down. Right. And I mean, that's how our brains work. We end up fragmented, and our soul fragments, right?
Well,
from that as well.
When you have blackouts, this is one of the lives I talked about. When you start remembering your childhood at 8 years old, that's actually not normal. When you don't remember your childhood, but it starts at 10, there's something happened. Because typically people will remember a little Polaroid shot of, say, Christmas, a tree, a pony ride at the age of 3 or 4, a smell, an image of grandma, whatever. But you will remember stuff, okay? But if you have like blackouts that make no sense, I don't mean not remembering like whole fucking chunks of your life at the age of 4. I'm talking about if you have absolutely no memory of shit until you're 8. Something happened, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, as a psychologist, when you, if you disagree, explain to me how that works, because that's my understanding, because certainly things happened to me, but I remembered shit at 18 months. I remembered shit in Africa. I remember with Africa, who can forget that, right? But the point is, but I did have, I'm going to be honest with you, I did have blackouts so in other words, there was like, I'll give you an example. There was a party, and it was a birthday party, and there was champagne, and all the kids were being allowed to have champagne in their ice cream. So no shit, we got drunk and we passed out. Right. And, wow. This was in the 70s in Malibu, California. And I remember there was a blackout, because the next thing I knew, I was being driven to my home, right, by a man, and he bought me an ice cream. Why would he buy me an ice cream? All I ate was ice cream the whole fucking party. Does that make sense? There was a blackout. Yeah. And then suddenly I'm being carried into the house. Does that make sense? That's what I mean by blackouts. Does that make sense? Does that help? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I just want to say I'm sorry that happened to you.
No, that's not the point. I was just using an actual example.
No, I totally understand why you're sharing and where you're coming from with that. I just feel like collectively my heart breaks for so many of us that have gone through, just the amount of confusion that brings to your life, right? When you don't understand why you can't remember blocks of time, or why all of a sudden you remember certain details of a traumatic experience, like 10, 15, almost 20 years later. And I too have gone through that. I had something happen to me in high school that I had absolutely suppressed and thought I had forgotten about, thought I had blacked it out, whatever. And it came bubbling to the surface during the pandemic, because trauma triggers trauma. Right. And that's why trauma is such a bitch. Because it's all stored in different parts of your brain. And once the trauma switch is triggered, then you're basically, it triggers all the other existing trauma, and it becomes just like a domino effect. Like you're just there and you're reliving it all over again.
Yeah. And I think for some people it can be, it can trigger, things. And I agree with you. I think that ultimately, in talking about childhood trauma and essayed abuse, or whatever abuse, like some of even the micro abuses that I see Biden doing on these children, it's a micro abuse.
Yes.
And everyone, oh, it's the president of the United States. We're not going to say. If I was a parent, I would have pushed his ass away from my kid. But I see parents letting it happen. I see adults letting it happen.
Absolutely.
No one's pushed his ass away. Like literally putting your hand on his shoulder. Because me, I would put my hand on his face, like pushing his face away. But that's me.
Right.
But pushing him away, like, no, don't fucking do that to my kid. Like, don't. And saying, don't do that. And
Right.
and so let's take it down to the CEO of your company, because you work for a company. You brought your kid to the corporate picnic, and you're saying that no, all bets are off. I'm sorry, all bets are fucking off. I remember I went to a Christmas party with my twin, and the CEO wanted to kiss me, a slop, one of those kisses. It's like flea, and I literally wiped my face away and leaned back, which was a massive disrespect because everyone saw it. But I was not going to let him plant a sloppy kiss because he thought it was okay to be sexy for a moment. I'm talking about this should be your way of acting with people. I don't care if the CEO, the president of the United States, I don't give a shit if they write your paycheck. They don't get access to you like that.
Right.
You want access to me like that? You better deposit, $2-3 million, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll still negotiate. I'm serious. I'm that cutthroat when it comes to that. It's like, but you're not doing it for free because you pay my $55,000 a month or year, excuse me, a year salary. You're not getting access to me like that. No how, no way. And it's self-respect. Because if you are going to do that, you might as well fucking do it from some massive money. I'm being honest. I mean, it might be rude, but it's like, don't do it.
It's not rude at all. It's self-preservation.
Yeah.
And I think and thank God you're the type of person that has never, been intimidated necessarily by authority when they were doing something that you knew was wrong, and you stood up for it. And you're like, no. But I think that's a huge problem in our society. There, it goes along with, what predators want, and why they're normally people that are high profile and in power, because they already know that so many of us are intimidated by power. We're intimidated to say no to it, to call it out. And that's why we're all still watching Biden sniff children.
Exactly.
Because nobody's calling out authority. And if they do, it's on, maybe once or twice on a different TV, on, Alphabet News. And they say it almost jokingly.
They say
and you're
jokingly,
like, no,
and
this is real.
And that's why when you have a woman like Kamala not saying it, because look, my twin would do certain things sometimes, right, that were not okay. And I called him out many, many times. And that's my fucking twin. Okay, that's the man I love. But if he did something that was not okay at all in my book, I don't care if it was related to someone else, I would say, what the fuck is wrong with you? You don't act like, right? Almost mafioso, like, what the fuck is wrong with you, dude, right? But what I'm saying to you is that the problem is that we have Kamala, right? And this is not a political, this is just a woman who is supposedly his wingman, wing woman. And for her to, by now, 4 years into it, the second year this was happening, we should not be seeing it anymore. And yet we still do. When he's in front of someone young, it happens again. And have you noticed that they were putting him away in the closet for a while, and then they've brought him back out, like El said? And it's like, okay, well, now, and it looks like somebody must have said something, because I've noticed in the last, say, 3 months, 2 months actually, there's no children around him. There's no adults. Have you noticed that?
Yes. I have noticed that. That did stick out to me. And that's funny that you mentioned that. Well, and I think it also, I started to notice that when it started to amp up in the news about Biden taking showers with his, was it one of his daughters?
Yes.
And then it was in her journal.
Yes.
And then, that story started to come out more. And then I noticed after that, and then coupled with, a few more news channels were catching him sniffing kids, that it started instead of calling it out, it's more of like the subtle, okay, well, let's just remove him, but it's still more of like, let's pretend it's not happening, but also let's pretend like, let's keep him away from the from what he wants, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so so it's throughout our system, is my point.
Yeah.
There's a corruptness, and so when you're dealing with public schools, private schools, you're and again, I had brought it up before. Make sure you check on your kids.
Yeah.
Make sure they know who they're hanging out with. Make sure you bring the kids over to the house. Make sure they, like you really know, like you're having dinner with these kids that your children are hanging out with, because you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot about their family dynamics. You might actually end up being a mentor to some of these kids who are in fucked up families. But also you get to see what your kid is being influenced by and by whom. That's very important, because
Right.
some kids sometimes, there's a famous writer, I forgot his name, but he was being influenced massively by a pedo that was like a neighbor, and they were using PORN to lure those teenage boys, in other words, into doing all kinds of things. So I think the Menendez case for us is bringing us back to the understanding that money doesn't make you a successful person, number one, clearly. And meaning the father was on paper successful, right? He was a multimillionaire. He had private jets, blah, blah, blah. He was handling the Menudos, the band, the Menudo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he would have been what they call the pillar of society. But that doesn't mean anything. It's the Boy Scouts, it's the Girl Scouts, it's the Boy Scout was slammed because they had pedos. I remember people were sending their children to Boy Scout, and they were, why don't you send your son to Boy Scout? I looked at them like they were, are you fucking crazy? Why would I fucking send my kid to, are you stupid? I mean, it was like that. It was like, no way would I do that to my son.
Right.
I don't need, we're hiking. Thank you very much. We camp on our own. Thank you very much. I don't need you guys to teach them. God knows what else you're going to teach them on the curriculum. Or else there's some extra things we taught the boys this week.
Right. Oh my God.
And it's a real problem, my friends. Don't get caught up in the old bullshit. Oh, well, I want my kid to learn how to survive. I don't know. How about this, Sarah Connor? Go ahead and teach your kid how to survive. Learn how to survive. Get a survival book as a woman or a man, and have fun camping and doing it for a weekend. Let's go fishing. Let's go scaling the fish. Do it yourself. Because your child will have a bond with you that you don't want. It's not that you want the kid not to be bonded with other adults, but you're going to have to be very discerning and massively, very, very careful in the first 14 years of your kid's life.
Yes.
It's that simple. I wish it was safe. I wish you could have Uncle Bob and his wife, watch your kid. I wish you could. I had an uncle. I had two uncles. One who was a complete pedo, and one who was an amazing man who and I did spend time with my amazing uncle. And it was fine. I was safe. There was nothing weird ever fucking happened. Never. But that's not, he's to this day, we talk once a week. So they're out there, the good ones. Don't get me wrong, but fucking don't put your head in the sand. What any last words, my love? We got to wrap it up.
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Tony, for having me on and for doing this live. And I know we initially kind of started out like wanting to touch a lot on special education, which I think we did, and I'm happy, at some point if people want to DM me or have extra, additional questions, advocacy, anything like that. I'm happy to support and point people in the right direction. But I think with this conversation that we're having again right now is so important because we live in a world where predators are all around, and it's not to make people paranoid, but it's to be realistic, right? And we know that the people that are targeted the most are kids, and especially special needs kids, those that do not have the skills, the communication, the ability to protect or defend themselves. Yeah. This is what predators go after, and they count on us knowing that, a lot of us are scared to stand up to authority, where we feel uncomfortable about questioning those in power, questioning those with money. And one of the most disturbing facts is those are the people that are most often, the leading predators. They are the one with the most power and the most money and the high profile, and they giving you that image that they would never be the ones
Yeah.
to hurt anybody or to do anything bad. Those are the people you have to look out for the most.
Yes. Thank you. That was incredible. And so please follow her now while she's online. So I'm going to give you guys a moment to follow her right now. She was a former school psychologist for 14 years, working with kids at risk, special ed, IEPs of the wazoo, testing, IQ tests, all kinds of testing, could actually give you some knowledge and some wisdom so that you can use it. She's also consulting. So if you needed her to consult, I'm sure you guys could do phone calls to speak to her and use her as an advocate. And in fact, you may want to use her as an advocate to choose, if you have the money to get an advocate, to choose a good advocate.
Yes.
Because not all advocates are created equal. Some of them are hustlers and grifters, and they rely on your pain and your passions and your emotions that are just flying within. So if you're looking to even hire her to help you choose an advocate, I would highly recommend you call her, connect with her and DM her, because there are wonderful people out there that are like her, that are in the school systems, but out of 100% of a school system, 10% are like her, good. The rest are shit, or they just here to collect their paycheck. They just want to retire. They want their pension. They long ago, if ever, gave a fuck about the kids in school. So when you have someone like her coming in, they usually leave within a few. I'm not joking. They leave the system at some point. I've seen it again and again. It doesn't matter. They're speech therapists, occupational. They leave the system to start their own practice. I swear to you. Or they join a company that offers OT or speech therapy. Am I correct? They fucking leave. They can't do it.
Right. Yep. It's like I said, my body physically demanded that I choose a different route to my career, to being able to support kids and help diagnose special needs and neurodivergence and being an advocate. My body physically made me sick.
Yeah, because of the injustice. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna upload this on YouTube. You guys can look at my YouTube link. It's on Linktree, and go on my profile. It's on Linktree, or just simply type up on YouTube "Sacred Intimacy Tarot." There it'll come up. Yes, I'm a spiritualist. Yes, I'm a tarot reader. I'm a psychic. I'm a hypnotherapist and Akashic reader. But you cannot have these conversations about Menendez, about capital punishment, about education, special education, about sexual trauma on children and adults. You can't be a spiritualist and not talk about this. It's an all intertwining dialogue that is massively needed for the collective, the personal individual healing and the collective ascension that we're on. And if we don't get this under wraps and we don't understand how to talk about it with irreverence and almost brutal honesty, we're not going to ascend. I'm being very real with you. So the ascension is part of these conversations. They're all important. Okay? So I appreciate you being on this live. Beautiful Canary. You're just amazing. And you have such a heart of gold. And so please DM her. Please thank her. Please follow her. I love you all, and I want to really thank you for being here and sharing the live. Please, when this is uploaded, I'll upload it tonight. Please share it with those who have kids on the spectrum, autism, ADHD, and all kinds of crap. Yes, we go off the beaten path and we come back. People need to be patient. These conversations are important. It's a conversation. But all we did was excavate the multiple pitfalls that are the shadows of these situations. Special education, CPS, teachers that don't give a shit, superintendents that don't give. A lot of these people don't give a shit. Let's be honest. You've all seen superintendents when they are filming and parents are coming in saying, "Look, why are you telling my kid that it's my son's a girl? Why are you doing that?" And have you noticed how they respond? They don't give two fucks. So there you go. I just want you to know that if my language offends you, and you're more interested in me dropping F-bombs to instead of the message that's here, then grow up. Grow the fuck up. I love you all. I'm sending myself on your journey. Bye-bye.
I love you, Tony.
I
Take
love
care.
you too. Bye.